OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
All right, you are very welcome along to OTB AM on this Friday morning. Adrian with you as always, delighted to stay. The man, you just heard the tail end of what he was saying there, because the notification that Off the Ball is live had just come through on his phone. Stephen Hunt, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you getting on?
Not too bad, Adrian.
Good to know you get the little notifications, do you?
Twitter stuff.
That's great. No, do not do that. Turn them on. Turn them on. Tell her audience to turn them on.
I come on this show and I go to take my daughter on a school run, seeing you off the ball last night.
There you go.
And this morning,
There you go.
Worldwide.
How many times do you open them? Quite frequently, obviously, is what I'm suggesting to you here.
How many times do I open it in the morning when I'm doing the breakfast for the kids?
Good.
Yeah, watch it.
Yeah.
On the phone is a bit difficult because it goes off if you don't press the button after a while on my phone, so I have to change it up.
The sleep mode, you got to mix up the old sleep mode, yeah. Well, you can get on board on YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, wherever it is that you consume us this morning. Delighted to have you along with us. And Stephen, thanks a million for coming in. We've plenty to get into. There's lots to chat about, it turns out, this morning. We're going to be talking about, obviously, the Republic of Ireland over the next couple of days, in action, key couple of days, so we'll get into more of that later on. The Irish rugby as well, that I know you're keeping an eye on. Some interesting stuff in the papers this morning as well. We're going to talk athletics a bit later on too. The under-21s though, last night you were out in Tala.
Yes, fascinating game. Yeah. As you know, I go to a lot of games, so to see these players from their club to transform, whether it's 23s football or whether it's League One on loan, Championship, Premier League, some case for some of them. So there's a world of talent. I think Stephen Kenny is benefiting a great deal by having these players together in big games, because he can't keep the front four happy. What he'll have, so when he gets to the senior team, he'll have to manage that bit as well, so it's great.
Yeah. Who impressed you?
Conor Coventry with his discipline. It was a simple role. Listen, I'm a big fan of Mumphy on the basis of he's the closest thing. I don't want to kill him here, but in terms of mentality and Roy Keane on the pitch.
Malumbi.
Yeah,
right.
Malumbi. He just goes after the ball, he sees the ball and he wants to get it back, and he wants to win, which is great.
Massive
big statement. I wouldn't say it, but I think the way he plays, it won't make a difference what I say, if you know what I mean.
Right.
For a young lad, he's one of them players, but I think he'll just go and do it anyway. Yeah. And hopefully he'll have a long career. He was poor in stages on the ball last night, but he gets away with it because he's young and he wants to win the ball back pretty quick, so it's good.
He's one of your crew, he's Waterford.
He is Waterford, yes, yeah. He's, not particularly, no. I've met him, I have a keeper in Brighton, an English keeper I look after, and I've met him a few times down there, and he's pleasant, he's nice. I don't think he's respectful, but I don't think he really gives a sugar about anyone, if I'm honest with you, which is nice to have as a player, because you need that self-belief.
And he's the same sort of style then as Keane, is he, in terms of that sort of...
Yeah, a young Roy that used to run box to box and couldn't help himself but run, but want to get after it, and I think over time he'll change his way of playing, especially as he gets into a higher level of playing. He won't be able to do what he does, but you won't stop him sometimes, and that brings other players up the pitch. They have to go after the ball and chase it. Like, so that was good. I think he'll do well for himself. Listen, barring injuries, barring anything in a young player's career, you need to look as well.
Adam Ida on the screen there a second ago was also one of those that impressed last night. Do you know what? We're going to talk to Keith Andrews a bit later on, but the biggest thing for me, and we'll get into some of the detail of it as we go, but it's really difficult to not be super excited about the future of Irish football looking at that last night.
Exactly.
Isn't it? It's just like the amount, there's 5 or 6, 7 names that played really well last night.
Yeah. They're there. Yeah. They're right in front of Stephen. That's the biggest thing for me. Stephen is learning loads from it. And if you go, listen, I could pick up players there. I could actually pick up players that are not even in the squad at the moment that are doing really well and playing first team football. So some of them are not playing. Like I seen Dara Shea play for the reserves last week at West Brom. He's wasted there because he's too good, but West Brom wouldn't allow him to go out on loan. So his frustration for the last 2 or 3 months nobody would have seen, because he's playing at a level now where he's bored of playing. So he has to rise his game pretty quickly when he comes to Ireland last night. But the 2 centre-backs did well, actually.
Really well, yeah. 3 clean sheets in the last 4 games, something like that as well. Like
they're a good pair. Collins can't get in the team. There's a boy at Southampton that's on loan at Gillingham, Thomas O'Connor. He can't get in the team, can't even get in the squad, and he's playing regularly for Gillingham at the moment, and doing well. So there's a big plus for Stephen. The transition now will be key for him.
Were you looking at somebody specifically last night, or was it?
No, just watching the game. Curious actually to see how the players developed, and like both keepers are excellent. Like Kelleher didn't have to make a save because he didn't have to dive.
Composed looking though, even at times there was a couple of little saves down to the corners, but even at times when the ball was coming back to him in a sticky situation, very composed looking.
Yeah, and when balls just go wide and your keeper doesn't have to dive for it, he knows his angles. I remember playing against David Seaman, and I'm hell-bent sure this is going in the top corner. It was only a reserve game, he just strolled over and let it go wide. And I was like, oh. And he was like, don't be silly. So that reminded me a little bit, and I speak with a few people in Liverpool, and his temperament is very good apparently, Keller, so it's great.
All right, that's good to know. So look, the future is bright, and there's plenty of coverage of the match across the newspapers this morning, so we'll get into that a little bit more as we go, but do keep your comments coming into us over the course of this morning. Here's a bit of a flavour of what's coming up between now and 9:30 for you. We've a busy old show with plenty between touching on the football and the rugby, and those newspapers, the athletics as well. Here's a bit of a flavour of what we've got for you. We're going to kick off in just a couple of minutes' time. We're going to have our Japan dispatch. Tommy, what's that, Eoin? Eoin, yeah, very good. That's coming your way in just a couple of minutes' time. The sports pages are a little bit later than we would normally have them, about 7:45 this morning. Alan Quinlan's going to join us just after 8 o'clock. And then after that, it's Richie McCormack's out in Tbilisi ahead of the crucial Euro qualifier against Georgia tomorrow. So we're going to check in with Richie to get all the very latest from on the ground. Keith Andrews going to reflect on last night's game in Tallaght, the Republic of Ireland system. Andrew given a bit of a naughty yellow card as well last night. We might have to get his thoughts on exactly what was going on there. The sports news with Phil Egan. And Colm Boohig, our chief resident nostalgia expert, is going to join us in studio just before 9 o'clock to reflect on the era of Steve Staunton. So we're going to do that just before 9 o'clock. We'll get Stephen Hunt's thoughts on that as well. And then a little bit later after that, then we're going to talk about the World Athletics Championships. We'll have Cathal Dennehy in studio. He was the athletics writer who was in Doha for the last couple of weeks covering the World Athletics Championships and all the controversies that went on and off the track. It was a mad couple of weeks, really. Like obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with the Japan World Cup and whether the game should be played or not played, but I mean there was like 40,000 seater stadium that sat empty for a lot of that
quarter full. It was when the commentators building up the race or building up the javelin or whatever, and you're looking at the stadium, it's quarter full, and 3 quarters empty. You're like, come on! Like, as much as they tried to do the lighting and the surrounding of the lead up to a race, it was just disappointing to have it like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to get Eoin is going to be up to us a little bit later on. He's going to be just before 8 o'clock. Right now, it's time for the papers. Going to start you off with the Irish Independent here. Schmidt urges Ireland to rise above chaos. Is the Rory O'Connor piece here. Scots make legal threat over Japan tie. You'll have seen this story unfolding over the last couple of days. A couple of games have been cancelled at Rugby World Cup, and Scotland are pretty apprehensive that their crucial game against Japan might go the same way, because a 0-0 draw and 2 points apiece isn't going to get it done for Scotland in terms of making the quarter-final. So the threat of legal action there. Good photograph from the game last night, but the photograph doesn't tell the full story. Italy's Sandro Tonali, the guy who looks as if he's been shoved onto the ground there. I watched it on replay. You know the way, I don't know if you're like this, when I watch football, I'm doing my old rewind thing. Like, I'm mostly not watching the live football because I'm rewinding stuff to watch.
You've said this before.
And he, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
He was hardly touched, and he was like the most acrobatic dive you've ever seen.
Yeah, and then on the other side, Parrott went down a little bit too easy.
He did, yeah. And
you got to think, you got to have a little word there. Do you know what? This is our DNA. We don't go down that easy. Yeah. But I understand what you're doing.
Yeah. I don't know. Was that why he got booked? I thought
he'll be disappointed when he looks back on it. And you're going to a level where there's players clever, they're bright. They're going to try and take advantage. They're cheats.
Yeah.
But the cheats in their way, and they don't see it as cheating. We see it as cheating because we're tough GA.
I know. Yeah. You got to get stuck in. Yeah. I tweeted about this last night, but I was the standard of the officials last night, I thought was pretty horrific.
Yeah, I think early on he let the game go with, I think Malone with Jason probably could have been booked for his tackle in the first minute, which might have calmed everything down, which obviously would have made it tough for Jason to play. But
then he let that go, and then he kind of had to roll after that. McCarthy ready to throw Aaron Connolly in at the deep end. Writes Dan McDonald, who's in Tbilisi ahead of the game at the weekend, saying that he probably will get game time at some stage. And Sheedy stays with Tip for 2020 bid, writes Michael Verney here. Liam Sheedy has confirmed that he's going to go again in 2020, unlike his 2010 All-Ireland win, that the 49-year-old is going to go again next year. Are you Liam Sheedy fan? I know you're a big hurling man.
Yeah, listen, I think he's obviously had a great year.
I suppose.
Yeah, wasn't the family are loving the limelight. He's straight in and after the game. Hugging the two daughters,
the end of the road for like a long...
Yeah, well, a long journey. They see the pain, or they see the sacrifices he takes to go out. Trainings, I just seen the draws made a couple of days ago. I think it's already starting back. So
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, ridiculous.
Right, what have you're going to kick us off with the Sun there?
Yeah, I thought they were taking the mick, Aaron Connolly. I seen a few of his quotes during the day about how he's dropped his dad off at the airport. Said goodbye, he wasn't in the squad, then Mick calls him. And Mick's quite blunt on the phone anyway, so you just don't know if he's taking the mick pretty much. And he rings his dad. He's on the way back to Brighton to come back over here anyway. Just nice. I remember the feeling of initially when you're playing Premier League football and all the family are coming over and all the friends are coming over, you're planning how to get tickets sorted. It's a great buzz for the game. Yeah. And then to get that on the same day, what a day it must have been for him.
Well, you mentioned earlier on we're going to talk about Steve Staunton's reign. He was the one that gave you the call.
Yes, he did, yeah. San Marino away. Actually, do you know what? He never called me. He just come through, which I think that's disappointing. I think if someone's getting their first call up, I think I'd phone the player and say, right, listen, you've done exceptionally well. Make sure you're ready to
rationale, bit of a confidence
a bit of a boost, man management.
So how did you hear?
Through a fax, I think, at Reading. Right. I was expecting it. I was picked in an Ireland B team at the time. Right. 2 months before, that must have been the last Ireland B game actually. Played at Bowes Ground, I think it was. And I've been playing Premier League and he picked me in the B squad. So I wasn't too happy to be there. But
so Steve Coppell comes up to you and says,
actually cracked my ribs in that game as well.
Right.
So it didn't do me any favours, the B game. But after that, when the call up come, it was true. The club.
And Steve Coppell says, we've got a fax in.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
And what are you doing after that?
Taking the mick, probably. Knowing Steve Coppell and Molly Downs, it would have been a case of, Kevin's got there before you. Doyle, they used to wind the two of us up like, Longy be next, but what are you thinking, Shane? And just to get a reaction for me. Like, even I'd seen Steve Coppell for the first time last Monday. Actually, he was with Paul Clement and they were just trying to get to me like, Steve's not like the old days anymore.
I'm more on Zen now.
Yeah, you won't get me like.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I failed to mention there in the Irish Independent, by the way, one of the stories that's worth a read inside is the big interview with Aidan Fitzmaurice is with Glenn Whelan. You can see he's been doing the rounds over the last couple of days. He's a guy that's not traditionally been that eager, keen in any way, shape or form to be in front of the media, but he's had a few interesting things to say, as he's entitled to. A guy of now 88 caps and counting. So he's had a few interesting things to say. He feels that he was left exposed to those harsh critics by the way Ireland played, and he says, we did have a few run-ins when I was involved, he says of Martin O'Neill. I don't think it was ever personal for me anyway. I just felt I could do certain things better, certain things had to be said, and I'm not one for holding back. We had games where we went in with a 4-4-2, the opposition had 3 in the middle, and I felt we were being overrun in the middle and things were not changing. Kind of interesting thought, like, because it would be a lot of players, I'm assuming, who constantly think that, whether it's training, in the game, after the game, but would generally probably internalise it, where he's gone up to the manager and saying, listen, we're playing 4-4-2, they're playing 5 across the middle. Yeah. What are we doing?
I think Glenn when he retires, will go into coaching for sure.
Certainly looks that way from that piece.
He'll have an opinion and he'll be strong with it. Yeah. I think under Trapp's teams, we were in a 4-4-2, sometimes overrunning midfield. But from a manager's point of view, Trapp knew that. But was willing to sacrifice. But obviously Glenn was willing to sacrifice. I seen Glenn, some of the quotes was, I'd change to the manager's style. Yes. And I would be the exact same as that. What the manager wants, you have to do, otherwise you don't play. So if you want to go run in the box, Glenn Whelan and score a goal for Eamon Dunphy, say, to make him happy, he won't play the next week. Yeah. So what do you do?
Well, funny you should mention that, because the Irish Daily Star this morning is the reaction of Eamon Dunphy. Dunphy blasts Whelan, writes Kieran Cunningham here in the Daily Star this morning. And how will I try and give a best sense of this? So the initial thing that Glenn Whelan had done was to give an interview with Tony O'Donoghue and RTE, and that's where a lot of the quotes had come out to begin with. And obviously Glenn Whelan's been a guy who's got an inordinate amount of stick over the years for his quality. Generally, he's the first person that people point to when, there's a goal to be had at that Ireland team. So he has generally not responded to that. He himself talks about his wife is pretty active on Twitter, and she likes to take people on. Whoever's having a pop, she's in, saying, listen, cut her out. But he generally hasn't had to go back. So he's been doing a load of interviews with various media over the last few days, it turns out, including one with RTE. Now, Eamon Dunphy, his take on all this here is that Dunphy blasts Whelan, by the way, is the headline, which might give you a decent indication as to what's going on inside. He says, we've gone back to the dark days of decent skins in journalism, picking on anyone who dares to confront the conventional wisdom. This is Eamon Dunphy talking about Glenn Whelan, by the way. Post the other way around. Giving a platform to a player to attack a journalist is not what journalism is about, and attacking someone who worked for RTE for 40 years without honest commentary, that is for the people who follow the game, we're in trouble. I heard the clip of the Whelan interview that was played in Morning Ireland. It was all whinging and self-pity. No mention that he's over 80 caps when he should be thankful to get 8. He's very, very lucky to have ever played for Ireland, given his level. Those comments for me are mean. They're nasty. They're really consistent with somebody who chooses to have a go at the likes of Kenny Cunningham and Richie Sadlier, who are, as he, in his own words, would use, are class acts in a way that frequently you find with Eamon Dunphy, the more he talks, the more he ain't.
So I used to have a saying, whenever the boys used to scream, I'd say, rubbish, it was lying to make friends. So he just talks rubbish, and look of a popularity votes. He's done it for years. He's getting a bit of airtime this morning. I'm not happy giving it to him, but his comments are ridiculous. Glenn's come out and been a constructive interview, saying this. He understands why people would say things when he's got to do a job for the team, and then he comes back and has a go. But are we surprised? No. Are we disappointed? Yes, because he's probably a granddad now, maybe even a great granddad by the looks of him. So maybe he should take life a bit easier and be a bit more supportive towards players still.
He's just trying to keep himself relevant. There's nothing more in this. Like, the idea that Glenn Whelan isn't entitled to have an opinion about somebody who was the most vocal critic of him as a player is utterly ridiculous. And the idea that RTE might have set it up, which seems to be what he's saying, just have a pop at him, is even more ridiculous. It's outrageous. Now, it is 10 years, almost to the day, since this. I don't know if we can have a... Here we go. Dunphy's a skinny rat. A skinny little rat. Says Stephen Hunt.
Yeah.
Give us some context to this before we get sued.
Well, he wasn't actually having a go at me at the time, but I remember him having a pop at players, and I was just getting more and more. It was winding me up, so anyway, I let fly one time after the game, and it was literally, I thought, okay, you are a skinny rat. He's still too skinny. For his own good, he should be eating more. You say that? No, so I haven't seen him in a while.
So obviously the point here being that the criticism was getting under your skin.
Yeah, he was constantly having a go at players, and if it was constructive, you could say fair enough. I understand that, but it wasn't. It was mean. It was horrible. A bit to get the limelight, of course, to get his pay rise at the time is what I said, to get his money up. And listen, there's still to this day, there's people doing that in the media, but that's fine if you. Sometimes Roy does it. Sometimes Roy will be really, really critical and have a small little smile at the end of it, and then you know what it's like. He can actually be over the top on purpose. He was over the top on Sky when he was on Sky, but that's Roy. You know what's coming. We know what's coming with Eamon as well, and you just got to deal with it.
Yeah. One last one on him, because I'm not sure it deserves all this conversation, but would the players have spoken about him specifically internally? Because at that point he was a leading pundit. He was huge. He was relevant in football then.
Yeah, he was huge in Ireland.
Were the players?
Of course, banter on the bus. Oh, look at that, he's had a pop of you, What are you thinking? Are you going to say anything? Most players would always say, no, I'm just going to let it go. And then they get into an interview room when somebody just
dials it up,
and he fire back at him, hence what I did, I think.
A couple of the other headlines in the Irish Daily Star this morning. You're taking the mick. That was Stephen mentioned that one earlier on. One of the other papers, Aaron Connolly, thought the Ireland call-up was just a prank. It looks like he might get some game time, and decision is below par, writes Mick Scully.
We're not going with
who's in rugby.
The nags.
What's happening?
Sorry, the wags.
Did I
Colleen and Barney's missus.
Yeah, did you follow that one? I actually, thinking about you enjoyed that story, I'm sure.
Oh,
did you?
What is going on,
Mad stuff, isn't it?
Mad stuff. It's ridiculous. Detective Colleen.
I mean, they really should get her involved in some of these...
reality shows. The Beckhams are going to be the next Kardashians, aren't they? There's no...
Oh, are they?
the Roonies. No,
You can't see it.
No.
What a story though.
To measure it and then for it to come out the way it is, there's very little Rebecca Vardy can do. I don't think she's. No. Anyway, come on, this is a
one
sports
serious
show.
topic to another one. Go on, what's the Irish Daily Mail got for us?
Daily Mail, storm them, Schmidt ignore typhoon, take me to the last 8. I'd imagine it's along the lines of, let's forget about the storm coming our way, concentrate on the game, make sure we get the job done. I think Joe Schmidt has done a job where he's seen his team a bit like the Euros in 2012 for us. 2011 we were unbelievable, and now he's just trying to get him going again, trying to get him in the right frame of mind for the game, and it's a tough one to deal with.
Yeah, it's the weather map that's on the front page of the Examiner as well this morning. A big blow, chaos and cancellations at Rugby World Cup is the big story in the middle of the World Cup, which is really mad stuff. But I mean, it is typhoon season in Japan, as we are continuously told. Parrot sees red, but Ireland remain on course for first Euro appearance. Plenty inside as well, including the thoughts, as always on a Friday in the Examiner, of Ronan O'Gara. What else have you got for us over there?
We'll go with the Sun. What have the Sun got? Italian sub for Connor. It's a small headline, but I'm going to go with it because it's a case of a guy last night doing a disciplined job, and it can go unnoticed sometimes. As I said to Jay, Jay was going here, there, everywhere trying to get the ball back, and he played in the middle, got on the ball, kept it simple. Actually, it was a Stephen Kenny-like team last night. I've seen resemblance of Dundalk, where the two centre midfielders would split and get on the ball. The two fullbacks would try and push up if they could, and they try and play through the lines. Very calm in possession, very good to see, I have to be honest. Very, very cool under the pressure. So they would have all learned a lot last night for sure.
It's 7:52 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're live in studio here with Stephen Hunt. We're going to hear from Eoin Sheahan in Fukuoka in just a few minutes' time, and more reactions from the game in Tala last night. We'll be chatting to Keith Andrews, the Republic of Ireland assistant manager, in just a little while. The Irish Times, meanwhile, if Ireland survive Samoa Storm, all black clouds will roll in fast, writes Jerry Thornley there. And Liam Toland writing how Henshaw can communicate the right message for Ireland. Such an important player for Ireland, Robbie Henshaw, and he's back in the game. Only his third game in about a year and a half for Ireland tomorrow. Robbie.
Can I give this little one a mention here?
Yeah.
ACL woe for Greg Cunningham.
Yes.
Small little piece, but a big blow for the player that's gone on loan to Blackburn. Actually, on player recruitment, someone from Blackburn phoned me for a player reference on Greg, but I don't know him that well inside out, but I rang someone I knew and said he's a great lad, great attitude. And then for him to go on loan from Cardiff looking to play some games to have an ACL, it's a massive disappointment for him, where he would have been looking at maybe getting back in the Irish setup and going forward.
The Telegraph, meanwhile, it's some of the England stuff there. Harry Kane and Harry Maguire. Harry's game, says the caption, fittingly enough. We will not be going home without a fight, though. It's the most interesting story. The furious Scots threaten legal action as their clash against, obviously, Japan in our pool remains in the balance. That's the Telegraph.
Call it off.
Call it off. I mean, I don't know.
No.
Kind of part of me would like to see it go ahead.
It's got to go ahead.
Scotland beat them. We get the bonus point against Samoa. We finish top of the pool. Everything's rosy.
Yep.
Have you got one more for us there? Is there any more? You must have another of the back pages. Yeah, I'll give the Guardian here while you give us more. I think you might have one more paper to give us there. This is the Guardian. It's Scotland storm. Townsend keeps faith, but typhoon threatens decider there, and Simone Biles as well. Golden Biles by far. USA gymnast claims an unprecedented 5th all-round world title, setting another record there. There's a lovely photograph on the back page of the Guardian.
I'm going to go with the English Times. United fear losing 450 million sponsorship. I'm not surprised. If you're a company and you're paying that much money, then you'd expect them to be doing well and at the top of the league and winning things. Hence the reason why the big deal. They're going to go through a transition period. United are going to struggle for 2 or 3 years for sure. All
right, we have plenty reaction, plenty comments coming in. We're going to bring you those your way in a few minutes' time. But before all of that, let's get live to the epicentre of the typhoon, Fukuoka. Eoin Sheahan, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are things?
How's the hand, first off?
Very good, actually. It's not looking too bad. It's come down another bit overnight. And I just want to say, on behalf of myself and the people of Ireland, thank you very much, Adrian, for all your help the other night, sorting out a hospital for me. I think the people deserve to know what goes on behind the scenes, and it was great man management from your behalf, Adrian, so thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for that, Eoin. That's excellent to give the viewers a bit of an insight to what goes on in our worlds that is utterly boring for them. But I'm just happy that you're here and you're alive, I suppose, is probably the main objective there.
Any initial signs of this typhoon where you are?
No, there isn't going to be any signs here for a while either. Maybe once it starts to hit the mainland, we might get some remnants of it here, which could be wind, it could be a bit of rain. The conditions say perhaps a little bit of a gale, all right, on Saturday, but I think really there is still uncertainty as to the exact magnitude of what version of the typhoon will actually hit the mainland, let alone what version will actually hit away from the eye of the storm. So there has been some suggestion now over the last 12 or 18 hours that the super typhoon will lose its super edge by the time it actually gets to Japan, that it is currently a super typhoon, but it might actually be downgraded a little bit more by the time it actually gets to Yokohama. That is the hope. That is positive news. Of course, you just don't know. Of course, it could continue on its strength. It could, of course, change course a little bit as well. So we just don't know fully at the moment, but it does seem things are looking a little bit better. They couldn't have got much worse, but a little bit better than we were 24 hours ago, especially when it comes to perhaps the likes of Scotland versus Japan going ahead in Yokohama on Sunday night.
Yeah, I was in that rough part of the world about this time 12 months ago, and it was also obviously typhoon season, and one came through, and there's like a kind of a giddy excitement before it comes in as everybody prepares for it, and then the reality hits of how devastating these things can be, and we're way beyond any novelty with this thing now. It's become far more serious, and that in terms of the threat to obviously life and everything else that goes with that, and obviously the fact that the games have been cancelled as well. It's like we're all getting a bit bored of the chat about it.
Yeah, completely. I think it's set in now. Like, I think I kind of feel bad for saying this, but there's kind of like a lighthearted nature to the idea of actually going to a country where there's typhoons happening for a big tournament before we came over. But then you actually see what Typhoon Haksai did to Chiba. It devastated the place. Like, I mean, this is not a thing where you're like, oh, this is novel. This is something that you can kind of take lighthearted whatsoever. I don't think anybody feels that. I think people genuinely appreciate the real threat that this poses to human life, especially if it is essentially a Category 5 hurricane coming through the country over the next couple of days. Nobody here is like, well, at least we've got a story to talk about, or at least it's another level to the World Cup. We might have been saying that tongue-in-cheek before the tournament started when we were thousands of miles away. But now that we're here, it's very real. It's not going to be a pleasant place to be come Saturday, especially if you're in and around the capital. I would say as well, just for anybody, the Irish Embassy have been issuing advice, and that their VFA website or the VFA Twitter account has actually got up some handy links for anybody who is making the journey over to Japan in terms of what Twitter accounts you can look at or what websites you can look at in terms of getting good quality information in English, because I know that can be an issue for people over here, actually speaking to people who've got a good level of understanding in English. So there are some accounts out there which is probably worth mentioning that can give you a bit of a helping hand.
Yeah, I think you've tweeted out some of those links this morning as well, so people can check out your Twitter handle on that. The pitch is in a bit of a state.
Yeah, it's not good. So we're outside the Hakatanamori Stadium here in Fukuoka, and the pitch is not looking good. So what happens in these captain's runs is that there's obviously a section put aside for cameras to actually come and watch the team training, and I think it was very deliberate this morning that Joe Schmidt kind of goes onto the pitch, knows that the cameras are rolling, kind of picking up bits of the turf, almost kind of coming loose from the ground, calling the logistics manager, Ger Carmody, over to him for him to have a look, kind of look at this. Do you see what this pitch is like? And Greg Feek at the top of his press conference was like, you guys are all intelligent enough to see that pitch and look at that pitch. So without saying anything too directly, they've suggested that they are very unhappy with the pitch. Keith Earl says the surface doesn't look great, although he does say that out in the open and running through the grass in his own position, it should be fine. The thing is there going to be a health and safety risk when it comes to particularly scrummaging on Saturday. Greg Feek says that World Rugby have given them all the assurances that they need that the pitch is playable and that it will be safe for the players, especially when it comes to the set piece. CJ Stander, who knows a thing or two about grass given his agricultural background, says that it's grade A grass, but that the surface itself isn't amazing. So the pitch here has been relaid recently, basically, and that's what is posing the issues. So we've had the humidity in Shizuoka, we've had the bad conditions as well in Kobe. Now we've got a poor enough pitch to contend with here down in Fukuoka. So at least there's excuses if things don't go our way on
Jesus,
Saturday.
Owen, stop it. I'm just looking at some BBC footage there of Chris Farrell burying the ball under a swathe of, lifting up a swathe of pitch, puts the ball under it, and then covers the ball with this like lump of turf on the pitch.
Yeah, it's not great, is it? You wouldn't be too confident if you're Cian Healy or Tyke Furlong trying to get your footing underneath you going into a scrum in those situations, and like given the magnitude of those collisions, like surely does pose a bit of a safety risk if it is going to pull up.
It's
like
just the
that.
power they have these days. Sorry, Eoin. The power they have these days, it becomes dangerous. Back in the day where they never went in the gym or never did anything, and now the fact that they're so powerful and they're in a scrum and they lose their footing, it can be very dangerous. So I do believe in the players in terms of what they're saying, and the pitch is bad. It's not good. But this happens. This happens on tournaments that are organised. They don't have pitches week in, week out. They're put down. They look perfect, and all of a sudden they're coming up, and you're wondering what's going on.
Yeah, like I would wonder as well if there is going to be some remnant of the typhoon here. But you do get winds and rain, and then a pitch that's cutting up. Like, it could be all of a sudden very nasty conditions. If the game was played right now, to be honest with you, Adrian, taking away the pitch, it's perfect. It kind of feels like a normal autumn day in Ireland. The humidity, the sweat on the ball, it's not a special excuse when it comes to Japan anymore. This feels like we're in Ireland at the moment. It doesn't feel bad, but it could get worse over the next couple of days, and that could add a different layer. Like, I don't know, like when you talk about the scrummaging there as well, the other elements, aside from health and safety, is discipline. Like, the referee, according to Peak, is well on top of this. He knows exactly what the situation is, but like, I mean, does it allow for a little bit more skullduggery? Can people say, oh, the pitch is why I didn't commit properly there into that scrum or whatever? So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how things develop, especially over the course of the 80 minutes on Saturday.
Yeah. Any major lines out of this morning's press conference?
Well, they were asked again about the typhoon, and the party line from Ireland is, we're just going to focus on ourselves. I'll be very interested to see how that party line changes, were we to finish second in the pool and come up against a New Zealand team who now have an extra few days rest. I asked Keith Earls earlier on, actually, just kind of generally, how would he feel if he was in a quarter-final? If it was any team coming up against England, France or New Zealand, coming up against a team that have got extra rest. And he made the point that actually they will be using it to their advantage, the fact that they've had an extra game this weekend. Like, I kind of said it tongue-in-cheek in the show yesterday that, you know, the All Blacks, it could be a bit further down the rusty track than Ireland would be. But I think that's very much clutching the straws at the moment. I think a rested All Blacks is a far more terrifying prospect than one that's had to go through a bit of a bruising game. That being said, would it have been that bruising for them against Italy? They might have got the job done after 50 minutes and got players taken off anyway. So probably not much of a big deal. But yeah, I would say we're going to start hearing a bit more about the All Blacks and how they've had that extra rest if we are going to come up against them next weekend.
Yeah, we'll only be rationalising whatever happens after it happens. It'll be like, that extra week off, that really had a bad impact on New Zealand.
I feel for the players because it's an anti-climax until we get to the quarter-final, and then all of a sudden it comes alive, and then the players within the week have a week to really galvanise themselves, get up for it, having been a long slog of a group stage to a certain degree, or it feels that way over there, to a game of that magnitude against New Zealand or South Africa, be amazing.
Yeah.
Can they get up to speed?
One comment here from Kieran. Go on, yeah.
Sorry, Stephen, I'd actually be interested in that. Like, I mean, when it comes to kind of high-performance sport, like, it may be completely pointless, but because of the defeat to Japan, Ireland have now been in a place where they've had to get up for Russia to a certain point, more than they would have ever had to do so had they beaten Japan. But now, for sure, they have to go into full peaking mode. They can't afford, to tinker with the squad or anything. It's full 80 minutes against Samoa, full 80 minutes against the quarter-final. And I wonder in many ways, does that make the sort of trying to get to that level for the quarter-final a bit easier because they have to go all out on Saturday? Those sort of back-to-back weeks. Yeah,
and again, they probably put on a bit of added pressure on themselves by losing to Japan, and they were expected to win right the way through the group, and they haven't. Maybe it has given them that intensity to go on and against Samoa on Saturday. So, listen, it's interesting to see. Within the camp is the biggest key. What's going on there? They'll know whether the intensity is right or whether it needs to be upped for the next game. I'm looking forward to Saturday.
Right on. Come on, look after yourself. Stay clear of those mosquitoes.
Yeah, there's a few trees around here, so they probably have a few insects, so I'll get inside immediately. Thanks a million.
Come on, take it easy. I don't know if you saw his Twitter feed during the week, but his left hand swole up to like 5 hands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wasn't pretty.
Panic, and then you're abroad as well. It's not good.
Well, exactly, and he eventually got himself to a hospital after much persuasion.
Yeah.
And then
the ball insurance was kicking in, wasn't it?
It was. Nobody in the hospital could speak English. He was trying to communicate with them, obviously Google Translate. That didn't seem to be working. I don't know if it was his Kerry script.
Would you not have somebody within the Irish team to...
We were pursuing that route, but it was like 1 a.m. So,
wow, yeah.
And also, I mean, I know there are obviously doctors or whatever, but they're sports focus. So what they could tell you about a mosquito bite in Japan, I'm really not sure.
No, it's not good.
Anyway, look, we took all sort of necessary precautions, and he's alive and well, we think. Anyway, that's all. And we're going to be talking to Alan Quinlan very shortly on more of that. Plenty of comments coming into us this morning, and do keep them coming in. We want to hear from you. Any comments or questions you have for Stephen Hunt, who's with us this morning here on OTB AM right through until 9:30. Do keep them coming into us. It's just gone 8:05 on this Friday morning. Jeffrey Linehan says, "Morning, Ireland," from Milwaukee. How are you getting on, Jeffrey? Good morning to you, or good afternoon, wherever it is, whatever time it is where you are. GGGG says, "WTF, it's 7:30. Why are you live when people are going to sleep?" I mean,
GGG. That's triple G, the boxer, no?
It could be quadruple G, this one. Paul says, "Morning, Jeffrey. How's she cutting? How are you, Paul?" Stephen Greer, "Absolute scandal that there's no contingency plans for the Rugby World Cup. Poor Italy and maybe Scotland." It definitely does feel. Sergio Parisse, the Italy captain, was saying yesterday that if this had happened to New Zealand, there would be absolutely no chance this game is cancelled. And you'd have to think he's right.
Yes, and it's a shame for the Rugby World Cup, because it's going to set them back years, in my opinion, to get to a level where you're trying to build a sport that's not got many countries playing, and this happens. So, and then the weaker teams are always going to complain. It wouldn't have happened for New Zealand for sure. But
yeah, you can't imagine so. And Scotland are crying blue murder clearly, and they're threatening legal action. They're dead right, by the way. Like, don't leave this to any chance, because the cancellation of those games certainly caught me a little bit on the hop. There hadn't been like this. There was like hints of it, but not this serious threat of it.
Yeah.
So like how much the Conor O'Shea or the Italians were thinking this thing might actually happen, and we need to sort of get in ahead of the conversation and threaten legal action. I mean, I don't know, but the Scots are dead right. Dara O'Toole says, "Have you seen the state of the pitch in Fukuoka?" Schmidt, very unhappy. We have, Dara. Been chatting to Eoin about it there. Parrott should have been sent off, says another commenter here. I mean, I don't know what that's about.
Should have been sent off, or
I don't even know what should have. Sorry. Shouldn't have been sent off. I don't know. I don't even know what the yellow was for.
Do you know what? It's a learning curve, because in the modern game, he lifted his hand. I think he raised his hand a little bit. I know it just gives the referee an excuse. Both there would have been 2 yellow cards. To be fair to Troy, he shouldn't have got involved in it. Being on a yellow card, you stay out of it. You don't do confrontation, because the referee was on the edge anyway. He'd lost control, so it was unfortunate. Yeah,
a bit of a shame. And Wolf Ticket says, "Scotland are rubbish. They should have beat Ireland instead of complaining now." Do you know, there's a little bit of truth in that, but at the same time, like the way the matches are scheduled, you're obviously assuming that every game gets played, right? Like you're not thinking, well, Scotland would have been thinking clearly for the last whatever number of years since the draw was made, like there's a good chance we're going to get beaten by Ireland in the first game, but we'll go on and win every game after that. Legitimately, like they can't be thinking, oh well, the contingency of what if one of our games gets pulled. Totally unfair.
Yeah, fingers crossed it doesn't get called off.
Yeah,
Japan will wanted to go ahead.
Yeah,
I tell you what.
Well, as hosts,
they're under a bit of pressure now. All this is playing in Scotland's favour. The fear of not having been able to redeem yourself, and it goes ahead. It's more like a relief the game is going ahead. And Scotland are dangerous when they have the ball at hand. They're electric with it. So.
Right, we've Alan Quinlan to come. We're going to hear from Richie McCormack, who's in Tbilisi ahead of the Republic of Ireland's crucial Euro qualifier against Georgia tomorrow. We're going to hear from Colm Boohig, who's going to be is off the ball's resident nostalgia expert. He's going to be in studio talking about the reign of Steve Staunton. We'll get Stephen's thoughts on that as well. Stephen is with us, of course, until 9:30 this morning. We're going to talk to Alan Quinlan, as I said. We're going to have some athletics chat with Cathal Dennehy, who's a freelance athletics writer, a bit later in the show as well. Plenty of interesting stuff, obviously, over the course of the World Championships in Doha. Plenty of Irish interest. We've got Ciara McGeehan's singlet here from the 15. I'm saying it's from the 1500 metres final. I mean, it's a Ciara McGeehan singlet. I think that's probably as far as it goes. Great days, unbelievable.
Can you imagine running against him? His long strides, and you're like 3 steps to my 3 steps to his 1 stride.
Oh,
like.
yeah. So Ciara, it was Ciara. Yeah, she was in I don't know.
Okay, I seen Ciara. Sorry, done well.
She was class. And there's a full interview she was in with Georgia on the week as well. She had a great chat with him about clean sport and about her own achievements and her own ambitions down the track. So we're going to hear from Alan Quinlan next. Before that, Ciara was in studio yesterday morning on OTB AM. You can watch the full piece over on our YouTube channel or subscribe to the OTB AM podcast. Here she is.
How's your jet lag?
Oh, it's good. I'm actually flying. I've been up since 6 o'clock. I got tested this morning. If anybody wants to see my wee say no to doping plaster.
That's how they give you that after they drug test you.
Well, I'm very lucky because my testers today was like, I keep this this sticker for special people, so I'm
right.
feeling really chuffed because usually you just get a plain one. But yeah, I've been up since 6, so I'm feeling right as rain.
Did they wake you at 6 this morning? Is that how that works?
Yes,
right.
they ring the doorbell, and I rush down the stairs trying
to make sure you're not one of the people who misses the door.
Ring it again because I'm not even in my own house. I'm here in my boyfriend's house, so his whole house is like, who the hell is ringing at 6 in the morning? So if the doorbell goes in the early hours, I know it's for me.
Is it so that when the doorbell goes at 6 in the morning, you're like, oh, I'm getting tested again?
Yeah, because nobody else comes to our door at 6 a.m. So, or else it's the police, and I hope everybody's okay. So no, yeah, I know that it's the testers and it's for me. So up I get, but I'm delighted to be tested. It's an important thing, and
especially in the wake of what's just happened.
Yeah, it's been an interesting championships for athletics with all of the stuff around Salazar, and it took away a little bit, I think, from the championships itself, which was a little disappointing. But as a clean athlete, I'm happy whenever sanctions are brought into place to people who are clearly cheating the rules and really bringing our whole sport into disrepute and casting a shadow over athletics as a whole. So yeah, it's an important thing, and I'm happy that USADA have conducted that investigation and sanctioned a ban.
Yeah, if you want to hear how to speak as a clean athlete about the requirement and need and requests for clean sport, Ciara McGean is your one-stop shop for that. She's an incredible ambassador as well for Irish sport. You have a budding athlete coming up in the Hunt household?
Yeah, my daughter started a couple of weeks ago, and she'd done the athletics in Birmingham in our school, and she's beaten all the boys in the school, so we said, okay, we'll go. So she did the Catholic schools of Birmingham and won all of that, and was like, okay, hold on a second here. So I took her down to a well-known place in Birmingham, running track. Said, listen, can I get my daughter in? I think she's okay. And after the first sprint, I could see the coach ringing the other coaches to say, come on, come out here and have a look.
Wow.
To be fair, she's got mummy's height, so...
Right. I presume mummy is taller than you then, is what you're saying?
She's the same height as me. For the girl, she'd be tall, and she's got long legs, so... yeah, it's really disciplined. Even hearing Ciara talk, it reminded me, because she said, I'm so happy to finish 10th, personal best or whatever it is. It's all about the personal best when they're training. Even though I've only been there 2 or 3 times, I've been asking questions just to see how they fit, what way you go about training for athletics. And
I could see you being a real tiger parent. Are you're gonna push her into this thing?
I'm nervous. It's terrible.
Are you pushy with her?
No, I'm not. No, her love is horse riding, so she will do horse riding. She'll ride anything, as she says, in terms of put me on any horse and I'll have a go. So that's putting me under a bit of pressure.
You guys are still based in the
UK, yeah.
So what's going to happen there?
Oh, you sound like my wife.
Are we looking at one of these singlets? What are we looking at?
It could be
Well,
I'd be afraid if someone put me on a horse at 10, 12 years of age and put me in a race. Oh, I'd be addicted, and I would have been the size as well. I would have loved it, but no one did.
And
she'll show jumping.
Is she going to compete for Ireland or Britain?
Oh, that's the question. Come on, do you need to answer that?
What do you think?
What do you think?
I mean, I'm hoping...
She was born in England.
I hope I know the answer, but...
Yeah, she'll run from Ireland, of course she would.
Alan Quinlan, come on in.
Good morning, lads. How are you?
How are you getting on?
Morning, Al.
I'm good. I'm not happy to see Stephen Hunt. He threw me into the sea the last time I was with him in Ireland's fittest family.
I was coming in yesterday by ferry, and I was just seeing the docks, where I was weighing it up for 10 minutes on this little dinghy. Can I rugby tackle this fella into the sea? And it took me...
He did.
And I knew myself I wasn't going to get him in with just a little small rugby. How was my technique on the tackle, actually?
Good, excellent. Good.
I got him in,
It does sound like Peter Stringer and John Lomo here, by the way.
It literally felt that way. But I knew I had to go into the sea with him to get him in, because I didn't have enough power, so we had a little swim. I actually regret it, because he's...
In the pockets anyway, that was the most important thing.
Yeah, he's a good man.
We've just been chatting to Eoin, who's in Fukuoka, obviously ahead of the game. He's been down at the stadium. I don't know if you've seen any of these shots or if you've been down there, but the pitch...
I was there.
Yeah, go on, tell us about the pitch.
It's horrendous. It's amazing how... I couldn't believe it. I walked out on the pitch before the Irish team arrived, and you could practically lift it up with your hands, the sod. It's all kind of squares just laid down the last couple of weeks. They had issues with the pitch for France and USA. There was a storm and it was very wet and the pitch cut up badly. But there was no contingency plan. Have you heard that word in the last few days? Contingency plan.
Bloody hell.
Where do you go with that, Al, from a rugby point of view in terms of tactics? Listen, obviously Ireland keep the ball in hand and they go through the middle, but in terms of, is there anything that will be specifically laid out for Ireland because of the pitch and tactics-wise?
Well, it's just Ireland need to get a bonus point, Stephen, you know, and if there's any sort of rain or conditions, it's going to make it much more difficult because, you know yourself, players want a solid underfoot pitch to play on, to run, to move, and look, I think Ireland will win the game, but they've got to get a bonus point to be sure of getting through. So I think it's not ideal, but look, they've just got to get on with it now. There's no point in even focusing on this, but the pitch it's bad. I was amazed, and I wouldn't be surprised if it cuts up badly tomorrow.
What, in terms of that bonus point then, Alan, and I mean, I really hope, we were chatting to on there, that we're not sort of in the aftermath going, Jesus, the pitch really done us over here. But in terms of the approach to it, obviously we went out pretty gung-ho. We'd scored a try after a minute and a half against the Russians, and Joe Schmidt had spoken afterwards about the ambition of doing that they didn't want to leave it until too late. Now, as it manifested, obviously it took us quite some time after that to get the bonus point in the bag. Do we go with a patient approach here and sort of grind it out over the 80 minutes, or are we going out to get 4 points in the bag in the first 20 minutes, 4 tries in the bag?
If you do that, you're going to come unstuck. If things go well, obviously, and you score early, but Ireland against Japan and Russia, they started the games very well, and it was probably the middle period of the game that they were poor. So it doesn't matter how to get the job done. I think they've just got to really focus. And people often say, well, do you mention the bonus point you talk about? You probably can't, because if you start getting a bit flimsy and throwing the ball around a little bit, Samoa will be gung-ho here to finish on a high. They'll see Ireland as a massive scalp. So they've got to be patient and look, get a try from them all, get a try from a close carry like the first one against Scotland when Furlong scores. Those kind of tries are as good as wingers scoring here and up the field, you know, so it doesn't matter. I think they have to be patient. I think if you look at Scotland-Russia a couple of days ago, for the first kind of 10, 15 minutes there, Scotland were actually quite patient and they kicked the ball in behind and they played a lot of tactical stuff just to push Russia back. And then they forced mistakes and then you sense an opportunity and you go for it. And they scored from the kickoff straight away after the first try, and they 3 or 4 tries in probably a 10, 15 minute period. And it's a hammer blow. So you've got to take it out of the opposition's legs. Samoa are not a bad team. They're disorganised at times. They're very, very talented rugby players. But if Ireland start forcing this early, you know, they'll get frustrated. And they're not coming from a place full of confidence and full of belief. So they have to kind of make it hard. I think make it hard, and they're enjoyable ones then when you make them hard.
Yeah, for comparison, Samoa are 15th in the world rankings, whatever that means. Russia 20th, so maybe gives people a bit of a sense of sort of the quality, the level we're dealing with here. We're close enough to a first pick 15, Quinny, obviously 12 changes from the Russia game. Talk to us a little bit about Robbie Henshaw, because there's a huge amount been spoken about the impact and the energy that this guy can bring to it. But at the same time, it's his third test, if I'm right, since June 2018. Are we expecting too much from him?
No, but he's someone who does the basics very well. So he's done it before and come back for Leinster and for Ireland, where he's been out injured for a while. So he's a superb player, and he's a real athlete. Someone who can, you know, really bring energy and accuracy and aggression and enthusiasm, and that's exactly what they need. So he'd be really chomping at the bit to try and make an impression. And so, you know, for him to do the basics well, but. I thought he was superb in the last Wales game, the World Cup warm-up game, and himself and Bundy Aki were probably the 2 starters before he got injured, and then Gary Ringrose came in and was superb against Scotland. So, and Chris Farrell, of course, came on for Bundy Aki. So there's a lot of depth there, but I just think Henshaw will be chomping at the bit. He probably won't play the full game, but you get 50, 60 minutes of aggression and good carries out of him. It'll be a big positive for Ireland.
Is it the same with Sexton in an ideal world? 50 minutes, 60 minutes, have a few tries on the board and get him out of there? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. Look, he's a good leader, and they were much better against Russia before he went off, and he was missed against Japan. So look, in an ideal situation, you'd love for Conor Murray and Sexton to try and find a little bit of cohesion together. And then Ireland are in a good place, you know. Yeah,
it's amazing how football players how they like 90 minutes under the belt. like Sexton probably hasn't played a full game in a long time, but they're obviously managing them to try and come good. I know Rugby take a lot of hits and stuff like that, but from a playing point of view, I'd always like to play the full game, but he hasn't managed to do that. And what's your feeling on Sexton for the tournament?
Yeah, but look, if you play, it's trying to get miles on the clock, really, Stephen. You know what I mean? And if he's fit and able and raring to go, I think the coach would probably take him off just to protect him more than anything.
Yeah.
If he's clicking and Ireland are in a good place after 50 minutes, there's no need to keep him out there. Keep him there for 55, 60, get him off. Joey Carberry needs minutes as well, you know. So they're two quality players, and we haven't seen a lot of them in the last 8 or 9 months. So hopefully, if when they play well, Ireland play well. So they're leaders and they're very talented. So hopefully they can get a run tomorrow. And it's not going to be easy, I think. I'm nervous about this game because I'm staying in the same hotel as Samoa, and I was chatting to a few of them, and they're confident about really taking it to Ireland.
Yeah, hopefully that confidence is nice and brittle, and we rattle them early and put them back in the back foot. What are you looking for from that back row, Quinny? Like Tadhg Byrne, in some ways it looked like a game that was absolutely cut out for Rhys Ruddock, and it seems like there's some sort of a management of, not quite injury, but managing his game minutes as well. But Tadhg Byrne at blindside particularly, your thoughts?
Look, it's an opportunity for him. He brings real, I think he brings pace and a real dynamism, and he did well himself, and Ruddock played very well against Russia. They made a lot of carries and they were dynamic carries, so I think it's an opportunity. He's a good line-out forward as well, and he's good at the breakdown. So Peter O'Mahony hasn't kind of hit the heights that we know he can. He's a very experienced, top quality player, and you'd imagine he still probably starts in a quarter-final next week. But Rhys or Tadhg Byrne, if he goes really, really well, he's going to put a bit of pressure on there. Yeah,
and another start for CJ Stander as well, so we'll see how that pans out. I know you spoke about the cancellations when we were on with the lads. I think yesterday it was. I almost said there's not much sign of the tornado, hurricane, typhoon.
Hurricane.
I was getting there. Not much sign of it yet.
No, it's getting a little bit windy here in Fukuoka, and but thankfully we're going to miss it. It's just a shame. Look, nothing you can do. We spoke about it yesterday. No contingency plan, even though they said there was one. It's just a shame the games have been called up. I think Ireland, first and foremost, they just have to get that bonus point win. Take everything else out of the equation and just get into a quarter final.
Even in your voice, Al, I can hear nervous.
I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a little bit nervous, Stephen. Look, they haven't played as well as we know they can, but hopefully they seemed in really good spirits today at the captain's run. So, you know, I know sometimes you can say they're faking it, teams, different sporting teams, but they seem to be in a good place, and the 9 days has done them the world of good, hopefully.
He's nervous because he's a one-man media machine and he's got other commitments.
He's doing great, to be fair to him.
Good man. Take it easy.
Cheers, boys. Thanks.
Talk to you in the aftermath. Alan Quinlan there, chatting to us this morning live from Fukuoka. So that is where we're at in terms of.
Been great actually on the commentary.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. It's always good to get his thoughts, particularly ahead of that such a crucial game. It is 8:23 on this Friday morning. Plenty of comments coming in. David Keogh says, "Great to have Hunty on the show. Sheehan has competition for his Friday slot when he gets back."
Shane Keegan.
Owen Sheehan.
Sheehan, sorry.
Mark O'Callaghan says he's honest. That's about you. Great legends on this morning, says somebody else. It's the Kerry boys there in the background. Paddy and crew. And Stephen Greer says, what's going on with this with the Japanese and World Rugby? This tournament is going down the drain.
You can hear the soccer lads in the background ready to fire at the rugby boys and give them a little bit of stick. But listen, it's just unfortunate and it's tough.
That stuff
doesn't interest you. You're not that.
It's like what? Like it's the rugby lads are outraged about what the soccer fellas are doing. Soccer fellas are outraged about the GA's outraged about. It's like we can all just
play everything
it's fine,
and enjoy it, you know? Especially for young kids and parents. Let them enjoy their sport. I hear the rugby. Actually, a friend of mine is a coach at rugby now, and I'll be playing a bit of golf, and he'd be asking me questions. Oh, what do you think this and. He has 6-7 coaches and they're under 10s.
Wow.
And they're all organised. And
wow.
But listen, it's great. Coaching's come on an awful lot since I was a young boy, so it's good.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, plenty more to come. Richie McCormack will be live on the line from Tbilisi. We've been the best part of 10,000 kilometres across the world to speak to the lads in Fukuoka. We'll be going about 5,500 to Tbilisi to talk to Richie McCormack very shortly ahead of the Georgia qualifier. Keith Andrews, not that many kilometres away, will be in conversation with us after the Republic of Ireland under-21s drew 0-0 with Italy last night, so plenty of reaction to that. We look forward as well, of course, to the senior teams qualifiers over the next few days, and we'll get Keith's thoughts on that. And we're going to talk Steve Staunton as well, in company of Stephen Hunt, who's with us until 9:30 this morning, and also with Colm Boohig will join us for that. And we've an interview with Cathal Dennehy. Interesting developments in the world of athletics that we'll bring you shortly. We sat down with Cathal yesterday afternoon to get his thoughts on the aftermath of Doha, but there have been some developments this morning that we'll get a handle on and bring your way in the next few minutes. But before all of that, it is OTB AM. It is 8:25 on this Friday morning. Before we leave the rugby this morning, we're going to cross over to Tommy Bowe, all with thanks to Vodafone Rugby, Team of Us. Tommy, take it away.
Hello and welcome along to the Rugby World Cup here on... welcome along to the Rugby World Cup here on Air Sport. I'm Tommy Bowe. I know, isn't it mad? Well, we've got loads of great things coming up on the programme. For a start, there's, of all things, action from the Rugby World Cup. And then throughout the day and subsequent days, we'll be repeating the same match over and over and over again. And in fact, just when you're getting over your depression about how shite Ireland are, there's just no escaping it on this channel. And this is a kind of a new idea we've had on Air Sport, but there's been a lot of viewers saying that they find the game, has gone too complex and, too many rules, and it's just gone a bit boring with impossible to understand terminology. So we thought it'd be a good idea for Liam Toland to talk us through in a sort of a clear and concise manner moments of the day that he's just picked out, just to help the uninitiated viewer. So obviously Liam has been pretending that he's been commentating live from Japan for us, but he's actually been doing it from his kitchen table, which is where he is now. Liam, could you talk us through your moment of the day, say from South Africa versus Canada there?
Well, Tommy, this exemplifies all that is fascinating about rugby at this level. At 17:35, 42 seconds into the game, with the wind blowing from an easterly direction at 24.6 kilometres per hour, a scrum was awarded due to an accidental offside from a malfunctioning offload from multi-phase ball to the attacking team 19.8 metres infield of the right-hand touchline.
Sorry, what?
The attacking nine, leaning 84.6% of his weight on his left leg, fed his hooker, who was at a 70-degree angle to his opponent, resulting in the ball being delivered to the 8 in 0.6 seconds, which was the reason the Canadian defensive line had not been set, the subsequent result of which was the execution of a try with 18.0217 seconds on the clock.
Well, we hope that clears things up for anyone who is confused. Okay, well, we'll be doing more analysis after the break. In fact, loads of analysis after the break. And don't forget, for you people at home who are watching at home, we've got our great competition. And no, it's not an all expenses paid trip to see the World Cup final in Japan. It's a watch. And remember, you won't miss a single moment of any of the games here on Air Sport. And sure, look, even though the results may not be going our way, at least on this channel, you can be guaranteed of a bit of crack. It's great. Can't wait till Gordon Darcy arrives for the banter we have. Gordon's great fun when you get to know him.
Richard's rugger thing.
On Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of Us. Everyone in.
Thanks a lot to Tommy for that very latest update there, and Richard Cooper. There'll be plenty more coming from him I'm sure over the next few weeks. Which camera are we on is the big question. Yeah, Tommy took it all in good spirits anyway. He was tweeting about it yesterday. I think it's good that he's doing Tommy. That's the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, he's being himself.
It's an homage.
Yeah, Irish TV is renowned for being themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
You got to be able to take the make a bit on it. Nearly 8:30 on this Friday morning. It's myself and Stephen Hunt with you right through until 9:30 on OTB AM. We mentioned a breaking story from the world of athletics, and overnight Nike, according to the Daily Mail, have shut down the Nike Oregon project. Just 2 weeks after Alberto Salazar's 4-year ban for doping violations, the Daily Mail saying that Nike have responded to the backlash over the US anti-doping agency findings. Alberto Salazar obviously helped found the Oregon project back in 2001. And a decision announced ahead of the Chicago Marathon where Mo Farah is going to race. Obviously, he was a student, one of the athletes who ran under the tutelage of Alberto Salazar for many years at the Oregon Project. And a memo from the Nike CEO, Mark Parker, has read, the situation, along with ongoing substantiated assertions, is a distraction for many of the athletes and is compromising their ability to focus on their training and competition needs. So it's a distraction, is what Mark Parker is saying here. I've therefore made the decision to wind down the Oregon Project. The statement added, I want to reiterate that Nike has always tried to put the athlete and their needs at the centre, at the forefront of all our decisions. And goes on with some more stuff there. So because it's a distraction for the athletes, Nike have decided to shut the entire facility down, is what's happened there. So I'm sure there'll be plenty more fallout of that over the next few days, but that's as where it stands. It's 31 minutes past 8 this Friday morning. We've got Richie McCormack live on the line from Tbilisi. Richie McCormack, come on in.
Hi, morning, lads. How are you?
Good. How's Tbilisi?
Interesting. Going to put it that way. The cab ride in from the airport, it was probably the first time I've ever seen a gun shop, which was interesting. And I went to look it up and see if it was, kosher and on the level. Just did a quick search of Tbilisi gun shops, and right enough, they've got a Google listing. They've got a rating as well. So if you're looking for a gun in Tbilisi, seems like the Winchester is the place to go.
Right. Well, I shall bear that in mind. I was in Tbilisi for the Aidan McGeady qualifier, I think we can call it, a couple of years ago, where we thought this was the rebirth of Aidan McGeady. He
first game on, isn't it?
Yeah. Scored, I'm going to say it's the winner. Was it 1-0? I'm very sketchy on the details.
Was I playing?
I mean, if I'm so sketchy, I can't remember the result.
We played him twice, but I think we played him the year they were banned from playing in Georgia, maybe.
Right. Anyway, an interesting enough spot. Can be a sticky enough spot. Denmark, I found out recently.
Yeah, a draw for Denmark just a month ago, and that's the kind of worry, I guess, from the Republic of Ireland's point of view, is that they'll come here, play tomorrow night, and kind of get stuck in the mud a little bit against what can be a really tricky side. I mean, they've had not a brilliant 2019, but you look through their results and it's that draw with Denmark that sticks out, and obviously the win against Gibraltar. They can cause teams a lot of hassle over here.
Yeah, some conversation. Mick McCarthy has plenty of reports in the papers this morning as well about the potential inclusion of Aaron Connolly. He's saying he will.
He's saying he'll play some part. I was watching the FAI TV interview with Mick this morning, and he's asking whether or not he'd be involved directly, and he says he probably will be. He's been impressed with how he's settled into the squad so far. He's been impressed with his personality. He's not afraid to put himself about. There's a cockiness, a good kind of cockiness about him that I guess is somewhat redolent of a young striker by the name of Orr Keane that we may have seen some 20 years ago. Whether or not he'll start, I don't think so. I think McCarthy's not a populist. He's not somebody who will have brought somebody in from, not necessarily the club, but from the under-21s just a few days ago and dive them straight into action. More than likely, he'll go for like, seeing as David McGoldrick can't play, and we'll probably see someone like James Collins starting up front. But the prospect of seeing Connolly playing up front would be a very exciting one. My worry would be is that we have a tendency with strikers to leave them isolated. We've seen it in the past with David McGoldrick. He's left to plough his own furrow up front. Shane Long has had that job plenty of times before as well. I'm not entirely sure whether Aaron Connolly will be suited to having to play that kind of game, and it's one especially away from home that he might have to be thrown into.
Yeah, I think he'll go, Richie, with Collins. I know he's impressed with him the last days. A physical centre forward. We'd all love to see Connolly go straight in. Would I play him? I probably would, actually.
Would you, from the start?
Yeah, from the start. Having watched him the last 18 months come through the ranks, play at different levels. Again, he's another one that doesn't really care what environment he's in. He'd really have no fear. The only thing I would say, if he doesn't play at Georgia, he might be more suited to playing a more Premier League based team in Switzerland. So maybe that could be the case for him. If he plays, there's no fear. He's very eccentric off the pitch, I think, the way he is. He goes about himself, so he's very much his own person and will do well if he's going to play.
What sort of a player is he? Somebody we've obviously seen sketches of him, and he's obviously appearing more and more.
Yeah, everyone is mentioning, Richie even mentioned Robbie there. I think he's more of a, oh, dare I say, a team player in terms of he'll run around, he'll get in people's faces, he'll wind people up. He's a bit of a young Rooney type in terms of a little bulldog around the place, will be in people's faces, will be on the edge again of being sent off a little bit, but I don't really care, if I'm honest with you, once he controls it, and it's very exciting.
Would he be suited, Stephen, to play in that one-up role? Like, because it's a one that McCarthy's obviously fond of. I don't know if Connolly necessarily would suit that.
Yeah, I think if I'm honest, I think Ireland will be more direct against Georgia to get the win. I think Switzerland will be more of a footballing game, and Connolly might be more suited then to play that because he's used to playing 23s and Premier League football now. So I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing him play at some stage.
What else of the obviously the potential inclusion of Shane Duffy is the other one, Richie? We thought we were in a defensive crisis there a few weeks back, but turns out everything might be all right.
Everything's grand. McCarthy has spoken in really relaxed terms, I guess, in how the Duffy situation has been approached. He was of the opinion, I think, going into this, that he would probably be fine. He's now trained fully with the Brighton squads, and McCarthy says that's enough of an okay from him to throw him in. So we're going to see Shane Duffy, no doubt, from the start, and probably in both games as well. I don't think McCarthy has any qualms about playing him in both. He mentioned previously as well, McCarthy, that Duffy had come into the squad off the back of another calf problem, I think it was, or groin problem, and was absolutely fine. Played the back-to-back qualifiers last time out as well, and there's no issue with him. He's a hardy buck, I guess you'd say, about Shane Duffy. He's somebody who's pretty durable and will be able to cope with whatever's thrown at him tomorrow night here in Tbilisi.
He's so important in both boxes, especially in mixed teams, when they concentrate on set pieces quite a lot defensively and attacking. So he'll come alive. I think Long and Egan obviously will be disappointed because they had a decent partnership in the last game as well. So I think Mick is so good at the next person coming in. I'm very happy with him. So he manages Egan, he'll manage Long to an extent where they'll feel like they're ready. The manager's happy to have him in the team, no matter even if Duffy is missing. So he's good at that.
Yeah. Obviously, a mad couple of days of sport. First week to sort of globe trot around the place. Richie, as evidence has been from the various conversations we've been having around the globe this morning. Many green jerseys around?
Do you know what? Not that many. I had a little bit of a ramble last night after I got in. The plane wasn't exactly festooned with them. There was actually more Belgians and Dutch heading over for whatever reason. We were coming in from Brussels yesterday, heading to Georgia for yesterday. Irish jerseys, there was a few. There's one. Shane Coleman was on my flight as well from Newstock Breakfast. He was giving out yards about the plane. He's used to more luxurious kind of jet set lifestyle.
He wasn't turning left when he got on like you, Richie, was he?
No. He was. He was giving out yards about the plane, but I think most other people found it fine. But no, I think the influx of Irish jerseys will probably come today, if I'm being honest. There haven't been too many around, and if we are going to see a big mass drop of fans, I'm guessing today is going to be the day for that. No doubt they'll probably be travelling in numbers as well. Coming in via Brussels yesterday, had this weird mishmash of fans in Brussels airport, because it was ourselves, obviously. There was the Northern Irish fans who were heading to Rotterdam last night, and then there was a couple of stray Scots knocking around too. So it was a real League of Nations suddenly descended on Brussels yesterday. Mad fond of their chips over there, by the way. There's kind of monuments to how much they love chips just knocking around Brussels airport. Posters on backs of doors, giant cones of chips knocking around the place. So I'm looking for something similar around here, that kind of national cuisine to be, I suppose, captured in some way in some kind of street art.
Rich, we used to love going for our annual coffee when we arrive in a new country. It must have been like, we always get to the hotel, right, where can we go for a coffee? Where can we have a look? People watching. I said it before. It's great. Coffee any good?
It is. It's. I haven't had the coffee just yet. I'm gonna have to drink gallons of it today to keep myself going. But there's it's a weird mishmash of kind of east and west over here. I guess it kind of would be.
You're nearly in Azerbaijan, Richie.
That's the thing. You kind of don't factor in how far away this place is until you actually bloody well have to go to it. Where you come in when you're flying in, it's a very old school Eastern European kind of countries. Like, all their industry is all kind of petrochemical kind of stuff. You see like the towers and the smokestacks and all that kind of stuff off in the distance. Very kind of brown terrain. And then you drive into this really, really massive city. As far as I know, this is like I think it was like the second or third biggest city in the Soviet Union, the second or third most important anyway. And you kind of get a sense of that just with the scale of it. You come in and there's massive new buildings everywhere. Like the architecture is just over the top. There's a building came in, I don't know what it was. It's kind of almost shaped like mushrooms, like a kind of a gathering garden mushrooms built up and up and up, but huge. And then you have like obviously the old apartment blocks, the old shops, yada, yada, yada. And then next to like you have this massive Holiday Inn that we're in. And next to that, you've got like a Wendy's and a Dunkin' Donuts. And then across the road, you've got another place that's just like regular Georgian cuisine and Georgian food and all that. And the locals hang out there. So it's this weird kind of smashing together of two or possibly even three different cultures. It's mad.
Stay away from the hummus is the only advice I have for you. Really? Phil Egan went out for a bite to eat when we were there at that time. We were chatting about earlier. And I ordered hummus. I'm still not sure 100% what it was. I know there was too much of it, and it was manky.
I keep getting recommended, there's this, I can't remember the name of it, there's this massive, almost like a flatbread thing in an oval shape that seems to have like an egg and some other stuff in the middle of it that is apparently like the local delicacy, so I have to give that a go somewhere. But yeah, it's definitely, I'd say interesting is probably the word I'd use most when I'm here.
Yeah, I can definitely get on board with a bit of flatbread. What's your prediction for tomorrow?
I wanted to be hopeful. I wanted to say like a 2-0, but I don't know, that result for Denmark here a month ago has really put me off, and the fact that it will probably be James Collins ploughing that furrow on his own up front. We need a lot of support from midfield. I know this will probably be a bugbear of Hunty's as well, as that when we do have that one person playing up front, you need the likes of Harahan and Hendrick, if there happens to be the two behind, to actually provide a lot of support coming from midfield. Otherwise you're just going to have that massive gap and nothing to kind of come from it. I want to say 2-0. My heart will probably go with a 1-1 draw though.
Try and play the game in their half. They're Georgia, let's be honest, they're not Barcelona. So try and play in their half, they'll make mistakes. Try and squeeze the pitch and try and get the win.
Richie, we'll be catching up with you over the next little while. Enjoy the hummus.
Cheers, gents. Nice one.
Richie McCormack live on the line there from Tbilisi, ahead of the Republic of Ireland's crucial qualifier against Georgia tomorrow. As I said, much more from Richie on that. We're going to talk to Keith Andrews in just a few minutes' time as well about the under-21 game last night, and also looking ahead to that match as well. So plenty more on that to come. Do keep your comments coming in, plenty of them this morning. It is 8:42 now on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM with myself and Stephen Hunt with you until 9:30. It's the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. John Giles was with us last night, as he is every Thursday night. Here he is on Matt Doherty.
Doherty, because there's talk that maybe he might move James McLean back there.
Nathan, I can't understand this about Doherty. Doherty played a full season, I think, when Wolves got promotion at left back. I saw him, and he played brilliantly. So what's the big deal of switching from right back to left back for lads that can play? Of course, he's right-footed, but I've seen lads who were left-footed playing at right back, and it was a great asset to them because they could come on their left foot and open the pitch up. You know what I mean? But good players get into the right position. You know what I mean? Don't be caught out. So they have time to get it onto the right. And he's that type of... I'd have no problem. I don't see what the big deal is about Doherty playing at left back. Because he can't play in the same team as Colm. They're two good players. I know Stevens is out. Stevens has been very, very good. But I'd have no doubts about Doherty playing at left back. None whatsoever.
Yep. No problems.
Yeah?
Yeah, of course. Actually, I think it might help James a little bit, because Doherty will probably go... Listen, Matt's a very intelligent footballer, so he'll play the ball to James if James McLean plays, and he'll go in field. He won't be afraid to go in field and play, so he'll give a bit of space for James, 1-2 boys. And
you're not worried about it?
No.
Evan Kilbam sat in that chair, what was it, a week ago, maybe a bit more, and kind of said something slightly opposite to that they're very different positions in terms of angles and...
Yeah, but I think Matt can play that ball first time on his right foot out to James, which then gives James more time to get at the fullback. Matt can then follow his pass in terms of going. Matt's very bright as a footballer, so the combinations he plays with Wolves are really good. So James will be helped by Matt's runs, hopefully, and hopefully they get up the pitch.
Kevin was talking about things like if you're a right-footed player playing on the right-hand side, it's easy for you to turn it off your shoulder if the ball's going that way. That actually, even your body angles and stuff like that it's a bigger challenge when suddenly it's the opposite way around.
Defending wise, I think one of the balls I seen Matt defend last week, where it was an in-swinging cross and it was going in at the far post. Matt didn't want to go near it, but he shielded the striker from getting it, which means the keeper knew exactly where the ball was going, and the keeper had to save it. It was going in, but Matt would rather that, or trusted his keeper. Just intelligent play, like, so hopefully he'll do the same and adapt to left back, I'll have no problems.
Yeah. All right, the Irish under-21s coach Keith Andrews is standing by to chat about Ireland's draw with Italy last night in front of a record crowd in Tala. First of all, Stephen Kenny on the Troy Parrott red card.
I thought it was quite harsh, really. I wasn't expecting it. It caught me, I didn't get a great view of it, but he didn't seem to do a lot, really. He was just trying to take the free kick quickly and just trying to get on the ball and Troy's an attacking player, like he's not. His attitude is always exemplary, really. He carries himself brilliantly, and I'm not sure. I'd imagine I don't know if he's ever been sent off. So I think it's quite unfortunate, really. I think, and the double blow really is that it rules him out of our game in Iceland on Tuesday, which is a big blow, really. And I thought when they sent Moise Keane off, I thought we were in the ascendancy then. We were going to play 11v10, and I felt that would be a great opportunity for us. And then I didn't see that coming, that Troy was going to get sent off as well, I must admit. So it ended 10 each, and there's nothing you can do.
Keith Andrews, it wasn't even the most controversial card of the night.
Morning, gents. How are we?
Morning, Keith.
What happened to you?
What do you mean, what happened?
Well, you couldn't see it on the TV, right? You could just see the flashing of the yellow card, and you could see you giving the referee a pretty sarcastic thumbs up, let's face it. But I've been speaking to sources who may or may not be sitting alongside me in the studio, who've been giving me a bit of an insight into what actually happened last night.
Keith, just good to see that you love it.
Look, we're just very protective of our players, lads, that's all. I just didn't think it was
your wife
warranted.
It was your wife sitting in front of me, her face going, oh my God, he's not even playing and he's on the edge of it. Claire Bear was in good form.
It was I was just frustrating because it's the play acting. Stephen was at the game, obviously he would have seen some of the play acting, something we warned the players about. But look, we've been in that situation ourselves, myself and Stephen, and as much as your manager, your coach, whoever tells you about the play acting, it can become very, very frustrating. And then when you add in, I thought the referee at times maybe just lost control of it and was a little bit trigger happy with his yellow cards. So it was just disappointing to see Troy go off for such a, I don't know, it just wasn't.
What was it? What was he?
For me when we watch it back.
What was it for?
It was just it's not even a shove. He puts his two hands up to kind of stop Keane. Keane was highly strung because there was a little bit of contact with Leo O'Connor. It was a foul. The referee had given it. Then there's a coming together because anytime he was getting it, we wanted to get bodies around him because he's a very talented player. And then he always reacts. He's got that spark, that fuse in him. He did, and Troy was in close proximity, walked towards him, and then because Troy's arms were up, even though Keane was instigating the contact by walking towards him, the referee deemed that to be a yellow card, a second yellow card, which was a big blow for us.
Yeah.
I thought there was loads of learning points, loads of positives from last night. In terms of, have you analysed the game? Have you gone back through it already, or have you just kind of, from what you remember?
Yeah, no, not yet. I think with the time we have in between the two games, we've a bit more time with this one to just go through it today properly rather than staying up ridiculously late.
It was a real Stephen Kenny performance, I think, in terms of playing as well, Keith. I thought the two centre midfielders were excellent. They got around the place. The centre forwards, I think Stephen himself will be learning loads from this in terms of how to manage the front four, the strikers he has on offer, and then when it comes to it, when he gets a senior job, how to manage him then. Because if you look at Obafemi coming on as a sub, he's coming on in the Premier League and he can't get in your team, so managing that, I'm sure, is going to be difficult.
It's testament to the group. If you go back to last month about Troy Parrott having scored the goal against Armenia, and then he doesn't start in Sweden because for whatever reasons we just didn't feel it was right, and those attacking options that you've alluded to. So last night, you're right, on paper I'm sure the Italians would have thought that we would have started Michael Obafemi, but it's testament to him and his attitude and the fact that everybody buys into the group, because it is all about the group. It's not just about the starting 11. And we appreciate it's very difficult for players coming away. And look, we've been there hunting when you're going away on these trips, and then if you don't get any minutes, we're not naive to that. We know players aren't going to be ecstatic about it. We try and be very honest with them and upfront about it, and that not everybody can play. We'll be as fair as we can to everybody. But I thought Michael's attitude last night was brilliant when he came on and caused a real threat.
Is any, just sorry to go back slightly, will you appeal the red card?
As far as I know, the initial kind of reaction last night from speaking to a few people is you can't appeal a yellow card, which kind of rings true to me. From
right.
I think it's a good learning curve.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it'd be a good learning curve for Troy in terms of playing against a quality opposition that know how to wind players up. And just for me, he probably was just a bit naive in doing what he did, and probably the ref had enough and somebody had to go. So it was a bit unlucky on his part. Stephen and yourself will defend him. But again, it's a big game and a learning curve for a good player.
I think it's a learning curve for all of them. You're looking at that team last night, and for the average person out there, they obviously want to appreciate the level that they're playing at, and the way they approach the games. Every step we've gone since we got together properly in March, there's just no fear in this group. There really isn't any fear. Like when you compare clubs our lads are playing to and the level they're playing at to the Italian players. Like they had 3 players drop down from the senior squads just for this game because they paid us a lot of respect. They tweaked their formation. They played 3 strong in midfield, which is something traditionally we would do. We would have to err on the side of caution and be very pragmatic in our approach traditionally. But this group was very, very different. The way they approach games, the way they take information on board, they want to know everything about the opposition, and they take the games and they play with real balls.
Yeah. I had a scout over with me for the game yesterday, and he speaks Italian, so all the Italian board are behind us. So obviously he's translating to us what they're saying, and they were really impressed with the Irish team in terms of the pressing, in terms of the organisation, and we really put them on the back foot. But then on the transition, we didn't give the ball away. A couple of times we gave it away just out of legs more so, but we were really good in possession, and it's nice to see. Well done.
Yeah, and obviously you've had a good bit of time to spend with them, Keith. The shape that Stephen talks about was very evident last night. Everybody really seemed to understand their roles. It looked like a really accomplished performance, if I could use that word, that despite the many talents that you might have, no matter what country you are at that age grade, it can be quite difficult to get to.
Yeah, look, what I would say is that they're all at a level at clubs in particular now in England, and I've said this before about the quality of coaching in the League of Ireland and what's gone on in the last few years. I do think it's improved. So these players are coming to us, understanding certain areas of the game that what we're after. And then time is precious. I've been fortunate that I've been involved with the underage teams, and obviously as a player, but I don't think you realise really as a player in terms of the preparation and what you need to do. But it's time that we have with them, particularly on the grass, especially for this game as well, because it came around so quick. Only had 3 sessions, so for them to be able to take it on board, and the squad's changed a lot since March, since we first met up, because of injuries, because of different scenarios of form. So it does constantly evolve. And then last night, obviously, we're without Aaron Connolly, who bounced onto the seniors, which was brilliant for him. We're without Darragh Lee, who was injured, and of course Johnny Afalobi picked up a little knock in training. So even from last month, you're down 3 key players from our performance against Sweden, but players come in and pick up the mantle.
And one of those players that got the chance in a slightly different role maybe was Adam Ida. I'm looking at him last night going, Jesus, this guy could really do a job for the senior team, and I appreciate why I know you're going to hammer me now for saying that, and it's easy for people to get carried away, but I suppose patience is a thing. But geez, looking at him last night, it was again a very mature performance from him.
Yeah, I think when you go back to March, Adam was the striker. I think he knew he was the number one. When you look at it now, with Johnny Afalobi coming in after the success he had with the under-19s in the Euros and getting a move to Celtic, there's a challenge there for him. And of course, we know that Aaron Connolly could have played there, Troy Parrott can play there, or Michael Obafemi. So there's real competition in those areas. And Adam's a player that I've worked with before with the 16s and 17s. I've got a lot of time from. And I think his natural talent is fantastic. And I think he showed last night how good he can be. I thought it was his best performance for us in a green shirt. I really did. I thought the way he held the ball up, the way he ran in behind and stretched their defence. And again, going back to the level of them, they sent a half the stone. He was playing for Inter Milan on Sunday against Juventus, against Ronaldo, against Higuain. So that's the level that he has to jump from from being on the periphery of the first team at Norwich, which is brilliant for him, and he's progressing well. But that's the level that they have to jump to when they come and play for us against some of these countries.
Just a quick one, Keith. How was the pitch? Because I know the ladies played there 2 nights before. I don't get that, if I'm honest with you. I don't think it should happen. I think the pitch should be saved for either for the ladies or for the men.
Yeah, it was grand. Yeah, there was a bit of concern. Obviously, we've had a lot of rain, haven't we, in the last week, 2 weeks probably. But no, it was fine. There was talk we potentially might not train there the night before the game, and that was the talk 2 days ago in around the time of the women's game. But no, it was fine. The ground staff done a great job on it. So no, there was no issues at all with
what's happening now with this team, and there was a record crowd at it last night, and obviously it was live on the telly as well. Like, everybody's getting very excited about that team and what they might achieve, and obviously Iceland to come next week and in a great position in the group. But I think more than that, like the future of Irish football, it's a huge amount of pressure for like the coaching team, who obviously at least some of whom are transitioning up the grades soon, and for that group as well.
Yeah, look, Adrian, you obviously, I worked with you closely for a year plus, didn't I? And even when I wasn't involved with the FAI, I would have been saying, I'm sure you'll back me up on this, that the level of quality that we have got, the players, it was a bugbear of mine where certain managers would go for the quality that we have. But I'd seen at close quarters, obviously players with the senior ones, and then at the underage ones, I'd experienced exactly what we had coming through. And I had so much faith in all of the players. And the work that has been done, there is a natural progression of how they kind of develop as players and as teams through the age groups, and if they're good enough, they go up and play a year above, etc. And that's probably what we've done with the 21. So look, the future is very, very bright for us. I have to say that, but they have to develop at club level. That's the key. Like, we're giving a lot of these players a platform to play for our teams. We don't always judge it on how well they do for their clubs because we've got a lot of belief in them. But there has to come a certain stage where that then bears the fruit of first team action, and they have to go and stamp the claim and start performing a career in England or wherever that may be. And I've no doubt they will, because the belief and the confidence that they're getting from this journey, I think will no doubt kick them on.
Yeah, the centre-backs are a good example of that. Both of them are not playing regular. I'd seen Darragh O'Shea play for the 23s the week before, where it was way too easy for him. He couldn't go out on loan. I don't think they allowed him to go on loan. There would have been plenty of takers, I'd imagine. And then adapting to the international game without playing at a good level is not easy. But last night they were excellent, to be fair, I thought.
Yeah,
okay, where do you go?
It's difficult, isn't it? Like, we've been in that position where, you know, we're coming in and maybe haven't played for our club for the month before we meet up, and it's difficult. So it's always on your mind at club level where, okay, I know I've got a game for Ireland in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is. I need to be fit as I can, even if I'm not playing first team football, because you can't always have control of that, obviously, because your club manager dictates that. So I think it's testament to them that the fact that they come in and they're in great nick, they're in great shape, they're sharp, they realise what's at stake. And of course we've got Nathan Collins in the equation now, who's come in and been brilliant.
And then there's ones that are playing and not in the squad, Keith, isn't that right? We won't go there, Keith, don't worry. Love you.
He's got his agent's head on now as well.
Yeah. No doubt. It's popped up every now and then this morning already. Don't worry about that. And obviously, so on to Iceland Tuesday night, and then they are obviously playing Sweden tomorrow themselves in a good position. We'll keep a very close eye on that. Some suggestion that Aaron Connolly might play tomorrow or on Tuesday. Is he good enough, ready for it?
Yeah, look, I think anybody that's seen that the Premier League action last weekend, I think would suggest he's ready. He's ready to be involved. You know, that's the plan. The plan is to get as many of these young players through, and of course, it's a blow to us for that single game or this double header, because we lose someone who's very, very talented. Has been key to us. But all the talk is, will he play? Will he come on? I'd be amazed if he doesn't come into the equation. I know James McClean has been carrying a knock, hasn't he? Whether he'll be all right or not. Obviously, Aaron is an option from the left, but he is a centre forward, so it would be a big ask, I think, to throw him in right from the off as the focal point if it was a one striker. But look, he's never kind of he always surprises me. Whenever you think, is he going to do this? Like, even playing from the left, he just takes it in his stride. He's got that type of mentality. He's a winner. He's driven. He wants to succeed. He's ruthless in his thinking. So yeah, I would not be surprised if he starts, if he comes on, makes a real splash, whatever it may be. But I think we'll see him in make his debut over the next few days without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, the Robbie Keane comparisons are made sort of ad nauseum. Stephen was saying maybe a bit earlier on he might be a bit more in the Wayne Rooney mould, as somebody who's seen him up close in a way that most of us haven't. What's your take?
Yeah, he's very different to what we've had, really. Not quite a Robbie Keane type player. I think one aspect that Aaron has is his explosiveness, and I think you're seeing that with Alderweireld the other day. The fact that he can spin into channels and he's so direct. There's a lot of players that are playing on the periphery of the game. He wants to play in areas where it hurts the opposition the most, and by that I mean getting into areas to score goals. Even when he plays in a wide area, he never played left wing as such for us. He kept his width at times, and we tried to work him the ball so we could get in 1v1 situations and really hurt the opposition. But I think the way he plays, he's still 19. He's going to evolve. I think he's at a club which I've been at, and I like the hierarchy there, and I like the new manager that's gone in. I love the way they're playing, so that's going to help him. That's going to develop him, and I think he's going to be a huge asset for us for God knows how many years.
Sounds good. Long may it last.
Promising what the one thing I would say is these four or five strikers we have coming through are all going to go through levels of dip. It's important then we don't hammer them or we don't kill them off. They're going to have stages as a young career where Adam Ida's going to have a bad game. But we showed last night his quality. Troy Parrott's going to get sent off. Let's not kill him about it. Learn from it and move on. And it's exciting times and let's go with it.
Yeah. You couldn't bring Troy Parrott into it's too late to bring him in now. It just struck me there you could actually, if he's
bring him in, yeah. Well, it might not be a bad option just to have him in the training ground, in the round to sample the atmosphere of the senior squad. Yeah. Without Robbie putting an arm around him, he seems to have an arm around all the strikers, which in a way is not a bad thing.
He's too busy getting involved, is Robbie, to be... He's too busy getting involved in the training to be putting his arm around anybody. Keith's not going to give us any comment on any of this, so appreciate that.
I do a lot of arms around players as well, so I can't talk.
Yeah, but you're not getting involved in the training with good reason, Keith. So that's
that's harsh. I did a roll at centre half the other day, but it was a walkthrough.
Enjoyed it last night. Enjoyed our chat. Chat soon.
Thanks, lads. Good to see you. Take care.
Cheers. Keith Andrews on the line there after that game last night. So yeah, it wouldn't be the worst idea. Would it fly him over, get him involved?
Even if he's just there watching, and learning from other players and how they go about it. But listen, he's learning from Harry Kane on a week in, week out basis. He's not too bad.
Righto, it is just got 9 o'clock on this Friday morning. Do keep your comments coming into us. Plenty of them as well, which will bring you a bit later on. Stephen was with us right through until 9:30 this morning. We're going to talk Steve Staunton very, very shortly with Colm Boohig. But right now, though, it's time for episode 4 of Shehan Sushi. All with thanks to Vodafone Rugby, team of us.
You're welcome along to another edition of The Thing, where I review Japanese food. I would call it Shehan Sushi, but then again, my family would never look me straight in the eye again. We're here by the beach in a place called Beppu, officially the funnest sounding name in all of Japan. So this place is known for having hundreds of onsens. So being the dutiful journalist that I am and researching for this very serious news item, I spent all day in an onsen today, sitting in the beautiful warm water, letting the steam seep into my pores, looking out over that panoramic view. Why we don't get any of your license fee, I'll never know. For anyone asking, yes, I was wearing swimming trunks in the onsen. You're not really supposed to, but then again, I'm just a true rule breaker. Also, I just bought a new pair of trunks before I came out of here, so it'd be good to get a bit of wear out of them. In a further string to my rebellious bow, I've been bitten all over my body by mosquitoes over the last couple of days. Apparently, the mosquitoes here might be carrying measles, and yet I haven't texted home to see if I did get that jab when I was in 4th class. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called the thug life. Spent about 3 hours in various hospitals last night. Before we get into this week's edition, just some feedback from a previous episode. Tommy Conlon was in touch on Twitter to say that the new Helen Lucy Burke has arrived. Now, I have no idea who Helen Lucy Burke is, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that she is some hip, young, new Instagram food vlogger. Please, Tommy, can you bear in mind that we have adults watching? So the first thing that we're reviewing here is called Skal. It looks like a strawberry-flavoured dairy drink. Could it potentially be Smooth and Juicy? Smooth and Juicy, of course, taken off the market a few years ago in Ireland in the single biggest tragedy that has ever befell our beloved island. Okay, it's got bits. Wasn't expecting that. Was not expecting unexpected bits. Jesus Christ. drinking what seems like cubes through a straw. I will say, however, that the drink itself is very pleasant. It's very, very nice. Great rehydration, delicious, refreshing strawberry drink. Going to give Scal a 75%. Next up, we've got something Yogherp. As we can see, we've got Little Red Riding Hood on the front with a church in the background in an alpine location. Not sure if Red Riding Hood actually did take place in the Alps, so Japanese drinks makers, you'd want to check your facts out there. And that is a peach drink, ladies and gentlemen, from high in the Alps, even though we're not anywhere near the Alps here. Obviously, the peach drinks travel well in this part of the globe. Pleasantly surprised with that. I thought because of the misappropriation of the geography on the front cover of the very carton, it would be an absolute disaster. Not the case. Going to give this something Yogherp with Little Red Riding Hood, dairy flavour on the front, 200 millilitres, a solid score of 68%. Finally, for now, we've got Pocari Sweat. So Pocari Sweat is a healthy beverage that smoothly supplies the lost water and electrolytes during perspiration with the appropriate density and electrolytes close to that of human body fluid. It can be easily absorbed into the body. Absolute bollocks. And I swear to God, if anybody ever takes a drink of Pocari Sweat and doesn't immediately say it's the nicest drink of all time, then you've got some serious issues, because it is the nicest piece of liquid that's ever been invented on this island. Unbelievably refreshing after a hard day of work at the onsens, pulling in my graft. For you, the viewer, this is exactly what you need afterwards. This is not an ad for Pocari Sweat, but I can officially confirm it is going to become the very first 100% score of this slot. Congratulations to everybody involved in this superb Ion Supply drink.
That is the first time I've watched a Sheehan Sushi and have had any sort of want to taste anything that he's had to offer. But that Pocari Sweat sounds absolutely cracking. Colm Boohig, good morning to you.
How are you?
Off the Ball's nostalgia correspondent.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for things that have already happened, it seems.
We will be bringing you back regularly to explore all of that.
He's one of the better looking ones, isn't he, off the ball? Like,
Colm,
he's got a bit about him, like, yeah, I think,
That's the camera. That's
I don't know how to take that.
Use that for my missus, who's also from Waterford, so that would
so there's a bit of simpatico there.
Yeah.
be helpful, actually.
Fair enough.
Thanks very much.
This weekend, Ireland's Euro 2020 qualifying campaign resumes, and with the emergence of our new superstar Aaron Connolly that we've just been discussing, and a genuine feeling around the place that we could actually qualify here, there is some reason for optimism. So quite different then to this time 12 years ago, this month, in fact, 12 years ago, this exact international break when it all went spectacularly wrong for one Steve Staunton and his ill-fated reign as Ireland manager. So let's talk about the Dundalkman's time in charge of the boys in green, and Colm is here to do just that, as is Rand Doyle.
Yes. Well, look, we all hoped for the best for Stan because he was such a legend. You're talking about a guy who got 102 caps for Ireland. His 100th cap was that game against Germany at the World Cup where he got man of the match, the Robbie Keane game with the equaliser. He won leagues with Liverpool, FA Cup at Liverpool, League Cup at Aston Villa. A brilliant player. So we all hope for the best for him. But look,
it doesn't always work out.
When you say Steve Staunton now to anybody, the first thing they think about is either the 2 Cyprus games or the last minute winner against San Marino. But when it all started, people were optimistic because it ended pretty drably under Brian Kerr at the end of 2005. We came 4th in that qualifying group.
Brian Kerr did wrong.
Well,
sorry, go on.
Well, the end of it.
No.
The end of it. I'm a big defender of Brian Kerr, but the end of it. So they finished 0-0 in the last game against Switzerland. We needed a change. We got the change. There was a lot of high-profile people linked with the job. And then it was given to this guy in his mid-30s who was a player coach at Walsall under Paul Merson. And Steve Staunton was named as manager. And we were all like, oh, this is interesting. With a very high-profile guy to help along in Bobby Robson. And then I don't think anybody will ever forget what happened in his unveiling press conference.
It's entirely.
I'm the boss. I'm the gaffer. And at the end of the day, whatever I say goes. The buck stops with me. And I will use Bobby in whatever role I see fit. And Bobby will have a huge part to play.
And for Robson, the 72-year-old is eagerly...
Like the language there that was being used, even I'll use Bobby in whatever role I see fit. Like, I mean, any small amount of self-awareness would have said to you that, like, you're sitting next to a football legend. There were other expressions that you might have been able to use. We'll use this, like, a amazing football mind to the best of our abilities to make us as good. I'll use Bobby in whatever way I see fit.
But I don't think we saw that at the time. It was a guy in a job that was massive, way beyond his qualification, that he thought, I have to stamp my authority here. So, and he just came across terribly. But I imagine he had the right sentiment.
I think that was his difficulty right through.
There was a bit of Jack Charlton,
but it started like that.
In it, for me, it's not the year. It was down the line from Jack. Then, like, and even if he says, I'm tapping into his brain, I'm going to use him as much as I can to help me go forward, they're all the right things to say now. Like.
I'm going to use Bobby Robson, was what he said.
So that might have gone in his head, but then that came out of his mouth, and everyone was like, Jesus. But it actually started well. The very first game was against Sweden, albeit in a friendly, but a Sweden game that...
there's yourself
there in Sweden.
That was not the Sweden game.
No, that's the Czech Republic game.
Yeah,
that's
one red card.
Photographs are leading in there. You got the call.
Yes, I got a call up through fax, through Reading. No one rang me. I think Steve, even now, actually could have. When you look at it now, most managers would call. Times changed, to be fair. So that back then, I look at it now. I wish I got a call, but you don't.
And when you come in, then is he like, Stephen?
No, he was
Steve. Lovely to meet you.
He gave me my debut, so I'll not say bad about Steve.
Well, when you come in, what's the like? Oh, you're welcome in.
He always reminds me now, because he lives quite close to me in Birmingham, so he always reminds me. I gave you your debut, son. I'm like, you did, but I playing Premier League at the time, Steve. I think I deserved it.
Yeah.
But that's what he was. And listen, I actually want him to come back into the light. Because when you meet him, sit down and have a coffee with him, he's very charming, very... But when he got in front of the Irish media, I don't think...
That's what happened.
Well,
that's exactly what happened to him, though.
Right, because he didn't come across well. It doesn't matter. Like, the media didn't make that up. Like, you watch that press conference, and I think we're going to have a couple more clips to come, and obviously
there's one information. But
he just did not... Like, that's not the media's fault. He did not come across well.
But can we bring him back? Like, can you bring him back? You should have a responsibility that...
I'm going to bring him back with his actually not that bad record. So it started off against Sweden in a friendly. As I was saying, it's only a friendly. But it contained, the team contained Zlatan Ibrahimovic in the old Lansdowne Road. We won 3-0.
Machine debut, no?
No, that was against Czech Republic later on, the second game of the third game of the qualifiers. But in that game against Sweden, Doherty scored his first international goal in 2 years. It was the first time Robbie Keane was captain for Ireland, and he scored. And the late Liam Miller scored his only goal in that game for Ireland. It was a brilliant goal. And Stephen Ireland made his debut for Ireland in that game. He came on for John O'Shea. And for me, I was saying to you before we just started recording, was Stephen Ireland, for me, encapsulates the Steve Staunton era because of what eventually happened. Like, Stephen Ireland played 6 games for Ireland. He scored 4 goals. Some of them were crucial, like the 1-0 win against Wales, the goal away to Slovakia. But, and then in a crucial juncture, after we drew 2-2 away to Slovakia, and before the picture there just up on the screen with the 1-0 defeat away to Czech Republic, between those 4 days, that's when Stephen Ireland went AWOL with the grandmother story. So he encapsulates the kind of madness of the time. I don't even think we thought it was that mad at the time. It's just that age has done terrible things to Steve Staunton when you rate him as an Ireland manager. And it's because after Ireland, the only thing he did of significance was he managed Darlington in 2009-10. Didn't last the season. And other than that, he had an assistant role at Leeds under Gary McAllister, which again was done within the season. He had scouting roles at Middlesbrough and Sunderland, and he's kind of gone off the radar. So like you were saying, you want to bring back his legendary status because he was a brilliant player and everybody loved him. But that's what happens when you become the manager of your national team and it all goes disastrously wrong. Because after that first game against Sweden, we lost our next 4 games. Albeit the first 2 were friendlies. Lost against Chile in Dublin. Lost 4-0 against Holland in Dublin, which is our biggest defeat in 40 years in Lansdowne Road. I was actually supposed to go to that game, but I got sick on the day, so it was good that I did.
Right.
And then the qualification started. Lost 1-0 away to Germany. Not a bad result. Germany had just come 3rd in the 2006 World Cup under Jürgen Klinsmann, who was also a first-time manager and a national hero, and it went really well for him. So even then you were thinking, it could be another Klinsmann. So they came 3rd. And like, Germany would get to the Euro 2008 final and lose to one of the greatest national teams of all time by the odd goal in Spain. So the 1-0 defeat in Stuttgart to start off, it wasn't bad, but it was the next game. I don't know if you know what the next game is after that.
Cyprus?
Yeah, Cyprus 5-2.
I wasn't there, thank God.
Yeah, you weren't, because you made your debut in 2007, was it?
Yeah, just after me, yeah.
So now Stephen Ireland scored in that game against Cyprus, and that's about the only positive thing. It was actually 2-2, and then they scored 3 goals afterwards. They just blew us apart, absolutely blew us apart. So even that early in his tenure, people were calling for his head. But he saved himself really with the next game, Czech Republic at home, which is Paul McShane's debut. Do you remember that game? Paul McShane was absolutely brilliant. He got man of the match. And he only played because of injury worries. Yeah. So he played and he marked Jan Cotter, who was an excellent player, and did a really, really good job with him up until Cotter scored. He turned him, he spinned him, and he put it into the far corner. Incidentally, Kevin Kilban scored an absolute worldie in that game to put us 1-0 ahead.
I think it's remarkable in itself.
I just wanted to bring that in. I just wanted to bring that in.
You have him on the show, you have him every day, and he loses a bit of power.
Not at all.
The man's a legend.
Because when you drop in and drop out, you have the mystique.
You lose that like aura.
Him.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, you talk about him losing the legendary status, but I mean, you can't forget about the fact that he was. I'm astonished here that you've said that his record is favourable. Is that what you're saying?
It's not. No, it's not favourable, but it's not terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, he lost those 4 games in a row in mid-2006, but he actually only lost one more game after that.
What's his percentage?
And that was, I don't know his percentage, but he didn't. He managed 17 games. I can't do maths. Managed 17 games, won 6, drew 6, lost 5. It's not bad.
Not bad.
Like Brian Kerr's win percentage was 55%, which was the highest in the last 30 years out of all the managers.
That's higher than Stan.
Yeah, that's higher than that. But it's not bad because people think the Cyprus games and the San Marino goal, so they think it was all terrible.
It's not.
No, hold on.
It's not great. Looking at Glenn Whelan's, I was reading Glenn Whelan's piece this morning. He talks about his 88 caps that he. I mean, I would need to look this back, but he said that he'd only been beaten 12 times in his 88 caps, which I found to be a remarkable stat.
I'd definitely beaten less than that.
But if you compare that with that, it's not great. And I'm also, I don't subscribe to we should forget about the fact that he was a crap manager and just go back to all the great times. Like, you can forget that. You take everything in the round.
Well, you can separate the two. Right,
so
you can you should separate the two.
Yeah. Because he was
like if you name Ireland's all-time 11, or even in the Premier League here, so since 1992, what's the Ireland all-time 11? He gets into your team. Yeah.
We should actually bring back the Stan of playing, and then try and get Stan to come across in the way he does when you sit down with him and have a coffee.
It was just all too much too soon from
him and Irwin. Is that what you're thinking, or what's your?
Well, Dennis Irwin, as you well know, was very underrated.
Dennis Irwin, around the office a couple of weeks ago, Dennis Irwin's a very underrated player, he says. Underrated.
He should never have been taken off free kicks for United. There's no need for it.
Who was he taking off free kicks for?
It was a marketing ploy for David Beckham.
David Beckham.
Dennis is marketing ploy. Dennis is not Roy. Roy will give you a few liners where Dennis has no interest in media. What is even Dennis doing?
But he's not underrated.
No, I'm not talking about media. I'm talking about Dennis as a player.
He's underrated in the way that anytime anybody talks about who's the greatest Premier League 11 of all time, he gets discussed. He's underrated in that way, which is not underrated at all.
And Erwin right back. Yeah. O'Shea McGrath.
O'Shea, Johnny's getting in there. Look at these.
Of course he's getting in there. Are you kidding me? What medals he's got, and he blows the rest of them out of the water. This is where John O'Shea is like Dennis Irwin. He doesn't go after the limelight.
In there ahead of John O'Shea.
No, he's not.
But look, I have to. I want to say about Stan, right? I want to say about Stan, right? Before I get to another clip I want to play. The start of 2007, it was actually pretty good for him. Albeit the last winner against San Marino was terrible, but he got that win. Beat Wales in Croke Park. Beat Slovakia in Croke Park. Kevin Doyle scored a very good goal. Drew 2 all the way to Slovakia. That was a turning point, really. Stephen Ireland went AWOL after that. His 4 goals in 6 games, and that was it. That was his last ever game for Ireland, believe it or not. It was that away game. Then we lost 1-0 away to Czech Republic, which is the picture of yourself up there.
And then you didn't help.
Send it off.
All right.
So
when did you get sent off?
I come on for John O'Shea.
Photograph thrown up there again.
Oh, no pressure.
Full head of hair, coloured hair.
I was come on for John O'Shea as a sub. He'd been injured. Coming on, played actually got off to a good start, and then 2-footed somebody.
What happened to you?
2-footed. Pretty much flew into a tackle that was overly aggressive, and the bench jumped up.
Was that the one?
No. That's Slovakia.
Oh, Slovakia.
The bench jumped up and made a big fuss of it, and.
Was a deserved
so you were saying it was fine.
Petr was in goal for Czech, obviously.
Oh yeah.
So the atmosphere towards me.
This was pre-Petr Cech. This was post Petr Cech.
Look at him on the ground.
And he reads like,
do me a favour, like get up, like.
Robbie's gesticulating.
No ref. Robbie's trying to help me.
Well, you're only saying because their bench jumped up. That was the only reason he got sent off.
It's right close to the touchline.
But that's the only reason he got sent off.
It helped. I remember the bouncers and everything were shouting at us. Yeah, they were arms up in the air, and I'm going to hit. To be fair, I went into the change room and Chazy's in there. He going, "What the hell are you doing?" Been sent off like. I felt like a bold school man.
But that wasn't even the low point, really. Even though we lost that game, the low point was but as a maybe, but it, like nationally,
we were out there anyway. We couldn't qualify.
Yeah, well, that's it. But what was really bad was the Cyprus game in Dublin was Stan's last game in charge. I was actually at that game. That finished 1-1 with Steve Fitton, his only competitive goal for Ireland, getting an equaliser the last minute. I have never ever been at a match ever where the home crowd was so vitriolic and abusive towards one of their own players, and that was Robbie Keane. Especially all the dubs around me were screaming at Robbie Keane because he was gesticulating off the ball. It was a really, really ugly night. And then afterwards, Stan gave an interview to RTE, and it was a really, really sad interview. And I don't want to play it here just to listen to it because it was terrible.
Very poor performance. Very disappointing, and I can understand from the fans' point of view it's not good enough, and it's not good enough from the players or the management team.
How much responsibility do you take yourself for that?
Well, that's my job, but once the players go out over the white line, they have to stand up and be counted. They've done it on Saturday, didn't happen tonight, and we're all disappointed with the performance, never mind anything else. We've been very lucky to get out of jail tonight.
Yeah, it was all a bit tragic. Phil, how are you getting on?
Grand, yeah.
Phil's still getting, you get yourself set up there.
I know it was. And I did feel sorry for him. I don't know what were the players thinking at that time? Because you played that night, didn't you?
Well, I didn't play in the Cyprus game. Was I suspended for that game? Was that his last game? I'm not too sure.
I thought you played that night.
Maybe I did, actually.
I remember
Was there sorry to butcher your question, what was he like? So he had a public perception that we've already discussed and is widely known. What was he a very different person away from that?
Yeah, of course. Everyone's in front of the media, everyone's...
So what was he like?
Well, now what is he like? I kind of met him at golf days and had dinner with him.
What was he like around at that time as manager?
Confidence.
But not, I don't even mean towards the end. I mean when he was in the full flourish of him as the manager of the Republic of Ireland, when he wasn't in danger.
Well, I think
what kind of a manager was he?
As much as a legend Bobby Robson was, I don't think he was the right person for the job, only because of his health, to be honest with you. I think managing players these days, you have to... Even back then, everyone needed an arm round their shoulder, and it wasn't there.
Now, you're doing your damnedest to avoid the question. What was Steve Staunton like as the manager around the camp?
Well, I didn't give a sugar. I'm like Aaron Connolly. I'm coming on the scene. It could be Hitler, the manager. I'd play, and I'd want to play well for us.
Great manager.
I want to play well for Hitler. This is the quote of the morning. Yeah,
but I'm serious. I couldn't care who the manager was. I wasn't at a stage in my career where I was observing managers.
As players, did you have a sense this guy's got it?
This guy, no, because the back of the bus would say, "Geez, what's Dan like now?" or whisperers and stuff like that. But from my point of view, he gave me his debut, so I didn't care what he was like. And a bit Aaron Connolly's right now couldn't give really a sugar.
Do you think when he was sending you out for games that tactically this guy is on it?
Yeah, but tactically.
Who are you getting to go on?
No, anyway, tactically, he didn't need to be on it then. So the game's evolved then. No, he wasn't. Listen, just stop being a bit of bush. He didn't have much charisma as a manager. That happens. It can happen to anybody. Put yourself in a situation like that. An international manager, it's not easy. So it wasn't ideal. But again, when I'm sitting down and having a coffee, he'll have a very constructive, detailed conversation and tactics and everything. But to the media, obviously, and at the time, it wasn't good.
Yeah, was the difference massive in the setup when Trapattoni came in?
Trapattoni came in and went, "This is what we're doing."
You see the massive difference.
Yeah, Trap knew what he had to do and what had to be done to get us to be a success. And we were a success under Trap.
Yeah.
It's just the end of it.
Did Stan get angry?
No, he didn't actually.
Really? Do you remember the Germany game, his first qualifier, where he kicked the water bottle?
Yeah, he got sent to the stands.
Yeah. No, he never got... I don't remember him going, you.
Did you ever stop playing for him?
No. I wouldn't do that for any manager. I hated Martin Allen, hated him, and I still try my bollocks off.
Right.
Sorry.
So you really didn't care who the manager was?
No.
Ever?
Because you got to look in the mirror. You have, as a pro, and I still say to this day to all my young players, you as a pro have to brush your teeth at 10 o'clock that night, look in the mirror and go, I give my best today. Because if you don't, you'll have regrets. Not the manager, even if he was rubbish. You have to deal with it.
Can I ask you just one more on the tactical side of things? If you had a sense that this guy doesn't quite have us where we need to be, right? Because an international career can be a very fleeting thing.
Yep.
Can just last a few years. It can be like, you don't want to feel as if you're wasting your time. Was there anybody at that point, in terms of like anybody, senior players I'm assuming, or anybody going to him and saying, listen, could we try something else?
No, but I wasn't. Well, maybe there was that I didn't know about. It wasn't my place. I only just come in the squad. Listen. All I remember is coming on against Wales, understand, and the whole place erupting, and I'm like a gladiator. I think I'm at war. That's my time at that specific time under Steve Staunton. That was my personal attitude towards it. Towards the end of the trap, when I get older and get a bit more politically involved, or we should be doing this, or trap come to me one time and going, what the hell are they doing going out, Stephen? And I was Seamus Coleman and I were the only ones left in the place, and we played Italy.
What'd you say? Oh, those lads. McLean is leading them out.
I get a phone call from actually Shane Longphone. He says, Stephen, help me.
Yeah.
So I'm going down to the trap going, Trap, listen, Kevin Doyle's not here. Usually them two are best buddies. They behave together. They're normally good as gold. Put it to the side and move on.
What did he say? Who are you?
So the 2-2 draw?
No, the Liège friendly, where how we beat him to this day I'll never know, but that's another story.
All right. That's a good side of Trap, that he was willing to, like, you don't often hear about. You do hear, like, I mean, that's good.
Yeah. No, listen, Trap was cleverer than what you think.
Yeah.
I think he was clever. I don't think there was any doubt there.
I think
your chip on your shoulder
from the media point of view is that he got a bit of...
Your chip on your shoulder about the media, by the way, is one of the biggest factors of this morning.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
But here I am sitting here, so I'm not a hypocrite now.
Yeah. Where are we at?
Well,
are we retired him yet?
No, I just wanted to make one point that the thing with Stan that did him, he had no positive landmark moment, because every other manager of Ireland in the last 30 years has had something. Jack brought us to our first 3 international tournaments. Mick eventually brought us to a tournament. Trap brought us to the Euros. Martin and Roy brought us to the Euros as well. And Brian Kerr only lost one of his qualifiers and had a 55% win percentage rate. Stan had nothing really positive, like massively positive or where were you moment other than negative aspects of it. Yeah. So that's what really did him in the end.
You haven't won me over, but...
I just wanted to defend him. I'm not trying to... I don't want to defend him as a character and as a legend, but not as a manager.
His first game, the Sweden game.
Right. Friendly. What have you got for us?
We'll start with the rugby, obviously. Big game tomorrow against Samoa.
By the way, lovely bit of nostalgia. We're getting crap from the producer.
That is here.
Just World Rugby have had their say on this pitch tomorrow. They have given Ireland and Samoa assurances that it's safe for action, and obviously we've seen the footage of the pitch. It doesn't look great, but Ireland had their captains run earlier on ahead of that Pool A clash against Samoa. It's reported as well that Scotland are considering legal action if their match with Japan doesn't go ahead in Yokohama on Sunday because of the typhoon. There is one game this morning. It's Australia and Georgia at 11:15. Also Pro 14 action tonight. Munster take on the Cheetahs. That's in South Africa from 5:15. At 7:35, Leinster take on Edinburgh at the RDS. Connacht play the Dragons in Wales. The Republic of Ireland senior squad will train at the match venue in Georgia later on ahead of tomorrow's Euro 2020 qualifier in Tbilisi. Last night the under-21s drew 0-0 with Italy at Tallaght Stadium. More than 7,000 there to watch Stephen Kenny's side, who are top of Group 1, 10 points from 4 games. Troy Parrott was sent off, so he's banned for the qualifier in Iceland on Tuesday. There's Electricity League action tonight. The Bohemians face champions Dundalk. Shamrock Rovers are up against Finn Harps, and Cork City take on UCD. Also, the second leg of the promotion playoff between Longford Town and Cabinteely. 0-0 going into that at the City Calling Stadium. Liam Sheedy is going to stay on as manager of the Tipperary Senior Hurlers for another year. Obviously won the Liam McCarthy back in August. He's aiming to become the first Tip manager to do back-to-back since 1965, and we know that Tip will start with a game against Stephen's beloved Waterford next summer. Obviously now managed by a Tipperary native in Liam Cahill. And have to give Andy Lee a mention. Yeah. Andy Lee is in the corner tonight for Paddy Donovan, who makes his pro debut in Ulster Hall in Belfast against Arturo Lopez. It's a 6-round welterweight bout. Obviously, high hopes for Paddy Donovan in his pro career, and Andy's going to be in the corner. We know Andy's a busy man now. He's got Jason Quigley to train as well. Yeah, the career is taking flight. Phil, thanks a million for that. Stephen, thanks a million for coming in. Really enjoyed that. Put you under a bit of pressure, which is... That's okay. Always enjoyable. Yep. Talk to you in a few weeks, no doubt. Yes. Colm, thanks for episode 1 of Colm Boohig's Nostalgia.
No problem.
If that's what we're calling it.
Yeah, if you want.
Will you come back with something else again?
I will.
Something else shoehorned in 13 and a half years on from Steve Staunton's appointment.
Do you know if I'm on the show tomorrow, or Nathan Murphy just won this award?
I think you're on with him tomorrow, yeah?
He rang me, he's won his award now, and now he's like,
see, can we fit you in?
I negotiated a price, and he just left me.
Your two egos in one room is
dangerous.
That's worth tuning in for alone.
It's nearly 9:30 on this Friday morning. That is nearly it from us on OTB AM. There's so much coming up and off the ball of the weekend, live from 1 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday with that man and Nathan as well, and our Rugby World Cup show with Neil Tracy will be live in the lead into that game against Samoa on Saturday. We'll be previewing the game and then obviously live on the radio as well with all the reaction just after. And also this weekend we're launching Series 1 of our new strand of sports documentaries here on Off the Ball. A 4-part series. 2 are going to air on Sunday. We're bringing you Brawl at 4 o'clock is the story of Mayo Meath 96, and then at 6 o'clock on Sunday you're going to hear Champions Neil Shanahan, Raf Diallo's documentary about the late racer Neil Shanahan, who died 20 years ago at the age of 19. You're going to hear them on Off the Ball on Sunday on News Talk and on OTB Sports Radio. So thanks to the lads for coming in. Yesterday we had a conversation with the athletics writer Cathal Dennehy and his takeaways from the World Championships in Doha. It was obviously pre the news that Nike are to wind up the Oregon project, so obviously we couldn't get to that one with him, but we will have Cathal back again to chat more about athletics. But for now we're going to leave you with our chat with Cathal Dennehy and all things World Championships. Enjoy. All right, the big clean-up is underway in the city of Doha after the 2019 World Athletics Championships were wrapped up on Sunday. The headliners, of course, many of them off the track, dominated whether it was Alberto Salazar and his 4-year suspension, the response to it, of course, the empty stadiums, or indeed what the championships were doing there at all to begin with. So to explain all of that to us, I'm delighted to say that Cathal Dennehy, sports journalist, athletics writer, joins us in studio. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, whatever time of the day this pre-record is at. Cathal, how are you getting on?
Very good.
The jet lag is still, you were saying, still there a little bit?
Slowly clearing. I was never as happy to see lashing rain as when I arrived back. As you can imagine, it was hit 42 degrees there in Doha during the week, so it was
perfect environment really for an athletics championships when you think about it.
Yeah, ideal. I mean, of course they air conditioned the stadium at 20, I think it was 23 degrees.
Right.
Bonkers concept, and I got to run in it myself in the media race, and it was it's actually
won it by all accounts. Didn't have a Conklin on it. I was watching the footage.
Let's not talk about that. But yeah, like it's beautiful to be in. Obviously, an environmental disaster. I can only imagine what the cost is of air conditioning an outdoor stadium in 40-something degrees. Obviously, as it will be for the World Cup as well. But it is very pleasant to run on. But the athletes who had to venture outdoors for training runs, even for warm-ups, and of course the marathoners and race walkers had to endure. Well, they were held at midnight, but you're talking 33 degrees, and it, again, the old cliche. Yeah, it's not the heat; it's the humidity that kills you. I was there for that, just watching, and you're just to walk around, you're drenched in sweat, and it really was suffocating. Is the best way I could feel, and that's just spectating. Having to run 26 miles on that is a grisly sight.
Listen to a lot of the athletes talk about like the atmosphere or whatever. They had to kind of, I suppose, for their own mental sake, in terms of trying to get the best out of it they possibly could, they had to say, listen, it's fine, we don't care if there's like one person here or 100,000 or whatever. But how weird, it's hard to get a sense of it when you're looking on the TV. It looks weird, it looks kind of bizarre, it looks a bit eerie. To actually have been there, what was it like?
It was strange for a lot of it. Certainly the first half of the week, the first weekend, did not feel like a World Championships. It felt like a mediocre, maybe Diamond League meeting, or kind of a low-level international championships almost. Thomas Barry even said that. He said it did not. His opening round, it was more a case of just get through this, and that was such a shame for an athlete of his calibre and all those athletes of that calibre. They're building up to this all year. It was 2 months later than planned, so there's that inconvenience for them to factor into their training, and then they get there and there's probably 8,000 people, 10,000 people. Unfortunately, for the women's 100-metre final, there was about 2,000 people in the stadium. That was embarrassing, to say the least, for the sport. But it was kind of a case of what did you expect, because the schedule was created to fit European TV markets in Western Europe, i.e. kind of 7 till 9, 7 till 10 p.m, BBC and the likes. Because of that, the women's 100-metre final was held at 11:20 p.m. on the Sunday night, and all the workers, the expats, etc., who they bussed into the stadium, who they gave away free tickets to try and fill up the stadium, they're all up at 5, 6 in the morning. Like, they're not going to be. A lot of them actually came early on the night, and maybe 10 to 12,000, and then by the time of that, there were like they didn't know the sport, so they don't really know the significance of the 100-metre final, the blue ribbon events, so they all packed off home at like 10 p.m.
And that was into the stadium was 40,000, am I right on that? 40,000 odd?
Yeah, and it was reduced to like 21,000. But as the week went on, the organisers were embarrassed into making a bigger concerted effort, so they were very much bussing in military, they were bussing in lots of different migrant workers. And to be fair, towards the end of the week, for Mutaz Essa Barshim's high jump, he was the home Qatari star who won high jump gold. It was packed. There was about 40,000 people in the stadium, and it was up there with some of the best atmospheres I've experienced from like Olympics, World Championships. But that was very much the exception rather than the norm, I suppose. And for many other nights, the worst fears of when Doha was awarded this were unfortunately confirmed.
I'm sure when you were over there, you probably picked up on the Mr. Black interview on BBC at one point or another, where he was on trying to explain, what the championships were doing there to begin with. Was there any sense of like, oh shit, we got this wrong from organisers over there, or was it, listen, gung-ho, we're over here to promote the sport and this has been a fabulous success, or was there actually at some point or another an acceptance that this was just not the right call?
I think as soon as it happened, it was late 2014, it was awarded under the previous IAAF president, Lamine Diak, who is now disgraced and awaiting trial in France on corruption charges. And there was all sorts of corruption surrounding this bid, we know that. And as soon as that happened in 2014, everyone in the sport said that this is going to be a disaster. Right. The heat, the fact it had to be relocated to October. I mean, every major championships pretty much is held in August. The whole season will end early September. So going into an Olympic year, you had to push everyone's season back 2 months. So you had athletes just tired. And like even Karsten Warholm won the 400 hurdles. I was talking to him in Paris about a month before the World Championships, and he was like, it's so strange to be competing now, because normally I'm on the beer, basically. I'm hitting the town on my end of season break, and now I've got a full month of training still to do before I get to the World Championships. So everyone in the sport didn't really want to be there, I think, even though, the whole idea was sold. It's the first World Championships in the Middle East. We're growing the sport, etc. And that's true. Championships shouldn't just stay in the safe locations of Europe where they know they're going to fill the stands. Eventually, if it is the most global sport on a par with soccer, obviously, and so you have to go to places like this. But Doha is a place where there isn't really an athletics fan base. And we saw that the only way of filling up the stadium was to basically invite people to come in for free and put on buses that would actually get them there.
Like, I get the idea of like going to somewhere like the World Cup, obviously in Japan at the minute, and like got its own issues going on. But I do understand the idea of going to a place like that that's got some sort of a bubbling under of a culture of the sport to promote it. But like, you can't do that and then, like you were saying, put the main events on at that time of night that excludes the entire reason for being there. Like some of the stuff I was reading, they were mid-championship saying, we've done all these things now. Now we've recognised that nobody's going to come. We've done all these things to try and like promote it and market it in the middle of the championships. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Not at all. And even one of the days I was going into the stadium and I met the brother of Craig Engels, an American 1500 metre runner, and he was wandering around outside in his American kit. And only after we got in, he was asking us and asking everyone, where do I buy tickets? And he didn't even know. And literally then we met him with his mother and his sister, and they were going in, and Craig Engels' 1500 metre world semi-final was starting in 5 minutes time, and his family was outside the stadium wandering around. They eventually went up, and I think they got in for free through one of the access tents. But he was obviously Googling and probably looking around online and asking people. He didn't know where to buy tickets, so it was one of the most poorly promoted events you could ever find from the local organising committee.
Craig Engels, the guy with the mullet and the tash.
That was the Craig Engels, yes.
You were chatting to, was that the...
Yes, it's a nice segue into the other story of the week, the scandal. Craig Engels is coached by Pete Julian, not Alberto Salazar, but he's obviously a part of the Nike Oregon project.
He didn't come off amazingly in that piece in terms of, like, it was interesting to watch, because obviously a decision had to be made that athletes needed to be asked, particularly the ones with such close ties, as to what was going on. He didn't probably come off the most amazingly out of that.
No, and you have to feel like essentially what he said, for people who didn't see it, he said, I'm angry at Jenny Simpson, another 1500 metre runner from America who slammed Salazar the previous night and by default basically slammed all the athletes in Salazar's group, by, I suppose, tarnished by association for choosing to join that group. Now, I have a certain amount of sympathy for athletes in the Oregon project on that front, because we've heard these stories for 5-6 years about Salazar. Anyone moving in the sport at a certain level has heard the suspicion, the shadows around Salazar. But everything I've ever heard about him was always that it was a tiny tiny circle at the centre of the Oregon Project, and no one else outside it was part of that circle. Even people within the Oregon Project didn't know what was happening in that tiny inner circle that Salazar had developed. I talked to a journalist back in 2014 now. This was a year before the investigation in BBC and ProPublica was released, and he was digging into Salazar at that time. And eventually we got to talking, and I mentioned a couple of athletes, and I said, what do you think? And he said, I'm in no doubt that this athlete is cheating. This athlete has never been exposed that he was talking about, but he said to me, there are 4 people in the world, at very most 5 people, who know about it. And he is one of those athletes, the athlete he was speaking about. So that's how a former member of the project described it, like an onion, not to go all Shrek on us here with the metaphors, but at the centre of that layer was Salazar's son, a physiologist at the Nike lab, and then an athlete or 2 athletes, and obviously we can't name, but you can take a good guess who those athletes may have been. And outside that, there's a lot of members of the Oregon Project. Even the whistleblowers say, Cara Goucher has spoken about this, Steve Magnus, who is Salazar's assistant coach. They were with them every day, and they don't believe they saw what was truly happening. They just got little windows into what Salazar was doing in terms of his, what we can now officially, and not be sued for it, call was cheating, and it was outright cheating.
There was elements of this that reminds me a little bit of Rio 2016, just the Gatlin stuff, and everybody wants him to lose, right? Because they're like, well, if this guy loses, then that proves that the guy's won is clean somehow, or the sport is clean. There was like a sort of a weirdness about it. What's your sense of, like, Salazar being caught, and it's a 4-year ban? It's not a terribly long time. You assume that if that remains, will that remain as it is? Is there a possibility of extending that, or does that just remain as is?
It will remain as it is, unless he wins at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Right. And as you can imagine, the Nike checkbook is out in major force, and that'll be funding everything his appeal.
They seem perfectly happy to. They're perfectly happy to sort of say, listen, we're kind of behind this guy. Like, it's been unusually for them. I know they're very tied, obviously, to the Oregon Project, literally got their name over the door. But frequently in this instance, you see the brand step back. Like we've seen it happen in GAA to a lesser degree here at the minute, where the brand will step back and go, well, look, actually there's questions to be answered here. Not really the case with Nike from what I've seen so far.
Far from the case. Done quite the opposite. They've doubled down on their support behind Salazar, and I think the reason we can deduce from that is this isn't like a distant athlete. It's not even a Marion Jones or a Justin Gatlin. This is a guy who is, as someone said to me last week, there's only 2 people in the world who can walk into Phil Knight's office. He's the founder of Nike, and one of them is Alberto Salazar without making an appointment. Alberto Salazar is essentially Nike, and Nike is Alberto Salazar. He's got the Nike swoosh tattooed on him. He has a building named after him. The whole headquarters, his training base, is on the Nike campus in Beaverton, Oregon. All his athletes do the workouts on the Michael Johnson track there at Nike.
Does there come a point, like at what point then, to ask it another way, do Nike say, listen, we're out?
I think if he loses the appeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, I think then maybe Nike might do what they're so bad at doing, which is take the right choice.
Because they'd have no option at that point. And then, but like, you're gone, but this thing continues, and like, we knew nothing about this stuff.
Of course, even though there are emails to the CEO of Nike, Mark Parker, when Salazar was running the testosterone experiment on his own sons. And if that doesn't strike to the heart of...
And is this one of his assistant coaches as well, was that right? At one point I think I'd read...
Who did what?
That Salazar was also testing on one of his assistant coaches.
Yeah, he was testing L-carnitine, the supplement, on Steve Magnus, and that was one of the things he got banned for, was infusing excessive amounts of L-carnitine. It's a legal supplement, but in the volume that they did it, it was very much not legal. And that's the one he also emailed Lance Armstrong about, which is never a good thing when you're emailing Lance Armstrong and telling him you've got this great breakthrough.
Listen, an interesting communication. I think we're going to speak to Steve at some point on OTB AM as well over the next couple of weeks. Just on the onion, and before we leave this one that you mentioned earlier on, so where does Salazar sit on the onion? Is this the first of other stuff that's going to happen? Is this just a total outlier and it's happening, God knows, and how many other instances, or in terms of the sport's reputation and moving into a cleaner place, how significant is all this?
I think it's huge, and that's where I think a lot of people in the sport were angered and disappointed, I suppose, by what someone like Paula Radcliffe and Steve Cram would have come out with on BBC there last week, because these are people who are very vocal about dopers, whether it's a Russian doper, a Moroccan doper, a Kenyan doper. They will often slam them, and it's a black and white thing, and then suddenly, when it's a cheat who's close to home, who has links personally to them or has links obviously embedded with their sponsor, Nike, suddenly it's very cagey. Suddenly it's let's withhold our judgment. Suddenly it's let's be careful here. There's no outright proof, and that's very disappointing to see, because Paula spoke about how we need to focus on better money for testing. That's true. Testing needs a lot better money, but at the same time, we know that testing doesn't really work. Maybe retroactive testing does. That's where you get a lot more people, because the science is so far behind the cheats. So we've seen in sport over the last 2 decades, it's investigations that do the really good work. We saw that one of the biggest other busts, the only one on a par with this that I can compare it to, and this is a coach who still hasn't been banned, is Jama Aden, who was coach to Ginzeba Dibaba, the current world record holder for the 1500 metres. And then you have another athlete come along, Sifan Hassan, who is now running times close to Dibaba. Coached by Salazar, of course. Now, Dibaba was running those times 350 for 1500, which is just mind-boggling a few years ago. And the next year, her coach, Jama Aden, was arrested in Spain as part of an investigation, and there was EPO and all sorts found amongst one of his physios who was staying at the same location in Spain, even though he has managed to escape a ban as yet, but he's disappeared from the sport, and his name is about as murky as it gets. Right. So really, I think if you talk to people in the sport for the last decade, the athletes know, the coaches know, the agents know, the journalists know. And really, for many years, someone like Jama Aden would have had a very questionable reputation, and there have been stories passed around athlete to athlete. They're doing this sort of stuff, and obviously people can't say it publicly until there is a ban. And then it was the same with Salazar, going back to 2013 in Moscow. I remember even an Irish athlete who was competing who saw, literally in the warm-up area, tablets being poured out almost on a plate, and some of Salazar's athletes just popping pills, an hour before they go into the stadium. An athlete told me that story, and I'm sure on a warm-up track you're not going to be doing anything illicit, but just that whole medicalisation of the sport, that was what Salazar led. And even in British Athletics, he was hired as a consultant to British Athletics, and there's athletes there who will tell you how after he became a consultant to British Athletics, this thyroid medication started being pushed on athletes as a policy almost, athletes who didn't need it. And this again is not a banned substance, but it's a highly, highly questionable thing, because it's kind of has a ergogenic effect on an athlete's metabolism. It can help them lose weight. And people will say it doesn't have a good effect unless you are hypothyroid, unless you have the condition. But a lot of people who've taken it, and a suspicious amount of athletes, especially in America, use thyroid medication when they don't actually have thyroid issues for that sort of ergogenic effect. And so really, Salazar, to me, was the godfather of this medicalisation in distance running in the sport in the last few years. And across the sport, it was heartening to see, as disheartening as it was to see a lot of his athletes stick behind him to deflect the anger, to deflect the blame onto other people. What was heartening to me to be in Doha was to see so many coaches and athletes and journalists who just went, thank God, this is the day we've waited years for. Our sport, the head has been cut off the beast. Now our sport's going to be a lot cleaner for it. And I think that is heartening to see, because that to me says that the majority, and I don't know whether that's a 51% majority or a 99% majority or somewhere in between, is much more likely, but that to me says that the majority are out there doing it the right way, and that they're not seeing this as a day when the sport's name has been dragged through the mud, which it has. They're seeing it as a celebratory day. Yeah.
All right, you're watching OTB AM on this Friday morning, live every weekday morning from 7:30. We're chatting to Cathal Dennehy about the World Athletics Championships in Doha and all the various stories on and off the track. You hope and assume that well, we won't assume, but you hope that the head doesn't grow back worse than it was previously, by the way. You mentioned Paula Radcliffe and I think it's fair enough to say outrageous comments that she had made on BBC, and the lack of depth or knowing or understanding for somebody who'd been her career, certainly lack of self-awareness, let's put it that way, to have made the comments that she made. We had Ciara McGean in studio during the yesterday morning with Ger, and she was chatting away about so freely for a lot of the interview about this exact topic and that, and she was very kind to leave us behind one of her vests as well, which I'm going to take was the one that she wore in the final. Whether it was or it wasn't, let's not worry too much about that. And she said that she'd way rather be sitting in a studio chatting away about her own career and her own progress, and what an unbelievably amazing achievement that she had. What's your take on, as somebody who covers athletics, because I know that certainly at times we get a bit of flack for focusing maybe too much on the negative side of it, like there's that drug stuff, there's the shoes story that we'll come to in a minute, and I know you're heading off to Vienna this weekend as well, you're interested in that. We get it for cycling. We probably don't do enough on the doping side of some of the other sports, but in terms of your take on where the coverage is at generally of the murkier side, I suppose, of athletics versus athletics for athletics' sake.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of an annoying thing when you're covering the sport a lot. I believe every sport should probably be covered the way athletics is, whereby no one's in denial in athletics that doping is a problem, and it rears its head at every championships every year. There's a Moroccan athlete tested positive today. You know, no one cares because no one knows who he is, but it happens all the time, and that's because athletics has made an effort to clean itself up. Cycling has made an effort to clean itself up. Both of them, of course, were polluted to the core in the 90s. Both of them, we know, the governing bodies, the UCI, the IAAF, were corrupt as well, and were in on it at one point, covering it up. And so both of those sports have had their popularity and their reputations ruined, really, by this. But what can get annoying for athletes, and it's not so much from a journalism perspective, because ultimately you don't care. As a journalist, you almost want the good story. Like, people love the open stories, and that's the reason it's such an easy sell. But what you feel for is the athletes who are doing it the right way, and you feel sometimes for an athlete like, I suppose in Ireland we cover Ciara McGeehan well. She's a big star for us. She gets plenty of publicity. But there's so many athletes in other countries who will never be heard of. Like, an athlete I think of, and Ciara mentioned her in her interview there earlier this week, was Shelby Houlihan, finished 4th in that 1500, 3:54, fastest run of all time. She's coached by Jerry Schumacher at one of the rivals to the Oregon project, the Nike Bowerman Track Club. Now, I've been covering this sport for many years, and I've been over to Portland as well and talked to many of those agents and coaches. I've never heard one jot of suspicion about the Nike Bowerman Track Club or the setup, say, around Shelby Houlihan. So you see an athlete like her finishing 4th, running the fastest time ever by an American, and no one in America will care, because there is this appetite really for the doping story, the scandal, the bad thing. And it was the same with the images from Doha, say. The pictures of the empty stands went around the world, and it was like, athletics is in the gutter. But then later on in the week, there was 40 to 45,000 people in the stadium, and those images weren't put around as in, athletics is back, And then people were, I was reading in some of the papers there, the death knell for athletics, a pig of a sport was one of the headlines I saw. And people saying it was a dead sport and a dying sport in this. But go back to the European Championships in Berlin last year. It was packed. I think there was 700,000 people there across 6 days. It was sold out every single night, I think. Go back to 2017 in London, packed.
Same.
Packed
I think
out.
Rough number. I think 700,000 odd. Yeah.
And it was that shows you that if you go to the right place with athletics, it still has the capacity to draw. The challenge for athletics is making people care the rest of the year, but it doesn't help when the coverage is so imbalanced. And perhaps I'm guilty of this as well when I write. Sometimes the temptation is always to do the doping story, the negative story. But I'd wager that, say, someone like Dalilah Muhammad versus Sydney McLaughlin, that their name wasn't mentioned in here or on any other Irish radio station, not just News Talk, but last week, even though she set a world record and it was the race of the week there. I think every sport should be covered the same way athletics, cycling are, where doping is part of the conversation, but it's not the only part of the conversation. Because I watch every sport with a certain level of suspicion, and all that's in my head when I watch a Champions League game is, have Juventus changed in the last 20 years because they were systematically doping soccer players in the 90s? As we know, it's all out there in court cases. I look at the Spanish teams, the best Spanish teams, and I just think of Dr. Fuentes, who was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, was involved in 4 different Spanish teams and writing doping schedules for them, and has said that if he told the truth about soccer, his country would have to give back the World Cup. But when you turn on that, and I watch, say, the Rugby World Cup, I watched guys who weigh 23 stone, who somehow have 5% body fat, who the most basic strength and conditioning coach could tell you is pretty much impossible without some sort of performance enhancer. So I think every sport should view through that lens of suspicion, but yet, when you turn on the coverage of the Rugby World Cup, we've all forgotten about that South African who tested positive now. It's not brought up anymore. When you turn on coverage of Guardiola, say, on Match of the Day, no one brings up his positive test for Nandrolone back in the day. No one brings up Dr. Fuentes anymore. It's all just distant past, and it's not part of the conversation. And it should be part of the conversation if sports like football, soccer, rugby, tennis, golf even, if these sports cared a jot about doping the way cycling and athletics did, it should be part of the conversation. So that I think on that sense, athletics gets a hard time, as does cycling, because the clean athletes who are doing it the right way, they just get completely written out of the conversation, and their achievements do and their hard work do.
And it's difficult for, you live, eat, breathe, attend the sport all the time, and so you can get a good sense of who's clean and who's not, right? And it's very difficult for the people who dip in and out of it, or the people, like you were saying, about they come in for the World Athletics Championships and you won't see them again for a couple of years' time, or you won't see them again until the Olympics comes around. It's difficult for those people to actually, like when Ciara was in with Jerry yesterday morning, it was so evident that Ciara's a clean athlete. Like every word out of her mouth told you that this is a clean athlete, and that's not because she's Irish, it's because you look into the whites of her eyes and you have the conversation, and it's abundantly clear she will leave you in absolutely no doubt. There's a lack of that.
There, Adrian, because Neil Black, the head of UK Athletics, once said he looked into Salazar's eyes and he told him he was clean.
Fair enough,
just so you know. And he said he believed because he looked in his eyes that he was clean, which is
poor expression out of me if that's the case.
The final point just on that as well, that when you have this imbalance in the coverage that athletics or cycling breaks into the mainstream media only for a negative thing, it also sends a message to, say, the IAAF or the UCI, and likewise to someone like FIFA, or World Rugby, that if we clean up the sport, this is going to actually do our bottom line and our popularity harm. So the message that sends, that if the only reason we're going to get in the media is when we expose a cheat, and then it's a big name, athletics is a joke, cycling is a joke, then they're actually going to think the way other sports think, and think, why should we expose the cheat? Why should we expose this champion athlete? Because
people want to see records, they want to see new times, they want to see stronger, faster, fitter. That's the unfortunate bottom line of it. We mentioned Ciara, a 10th in the 1500 metre final, like an incredible success, a PB. I think I heard her say that her time in previous races would have won 7 of the last 8 or something like that. She's done her country some service over the last few days.
She has. That particular stat I never quite like, because middle distance races are tactical, championship finals, sure. So you could say it for a sprint and it's legitimate, but there was athletes like Ginzeba Dibaba who ran 350, the world record, say 4 years ago, and she'd have won the championship final outside 4 minutes. But however, that's not at all to take away from Ciara Mageean, because 10th in the world is an astonishing achievement. Sonia Sullivan was the last one to do it in the 90s in a middle distance final for Ireland, and really a career's work went into that result for Ciara Mageean. She's an athlete who is thoroughly believable, a gifted athlete who came out at the age of 15 and won a national senior title, beating 2 Irish senior internationals at the age of 15. That's how good she was. She was still playing camogie at the time. Her early 20s really were lost to injury and surgery on a bone spur in her ankle, and she made it all the way back. And then she had a tough decision to make after she made won a European medal, was with coach Jerry Kiernan. She had to decide she had a bad year in 2017, decided to up sticks to Manchester. That rekindled her career. She's in a very professional setup now with Steve Vernon, who's doing a brilliant job. She's getting stronger every year. Again, there's no point talking about medals and putting false expectation on her shoulders. She's definitely in line for like a European medal next year if she stays healthy there at the end of August. At the Olympics, she should be in line for like a top 8, maybe even a top 6 finish if she can just improve that little 1% between now and then. Yeah, she was saying she obviously wants to get... She's in such a great place. Listened to her yesterday morning, and she... obviously wants to get below the 4 minutes. She's targeting Sonia's 3:58. I think that's something she'd love to do, reading between the lines of what she had to say as well, so we'll keep a firm eye on her. And apologies for ending on this one given the conversation we've just had, but you're off to Vienna this week for the race at the weekend, where a lot of the chat is about this. I've been reading up a little bit about it, including some Sonia herself earlier on in the year was chatting about the impact that this Nike percent runner spike is having on athletics. We talk about doping, but Jesus, this seems to be having an unbelievable impact. It's technological doping, really. And to be fair to Nike, they have led the way in the footwear department. They have the best minds in the world making the fastest shoes in the world, and they were 2 to 3 years ahead of every other brand with development of the shoe. Now, the way they do it, again, with Nike is a bit dubious, because this came out early in 2016, this shoe, and it was been trialled, and it was only given out the prototype to their special few, their Eliud Kipchoge, their Galen Rupp's. Other Nike athletes, even who are professional athletes, still don't get this certain shoe. They have a mass market version of this shoe that you can buy for about €300. So obviously your 3 or 4 hour marathoners are taking 5 minutes off their personal bests with this shoe. But the catch is, the ones the elites wear, or the special few of Nike's chosen few wear, is a different shoe. It's made personalised, and it's far more effective than the mass market one. So I guess but obviously it's highly effective. I mean, records are falling. It's got a carbon fibre blade in it. 5 minutes off like a marathon time is enormous. We had that stuff with these swimsuits a couple of years ago, and then they decided actually we just need to get rid of that. Is there a possibility with this, or what's? It should be, in my mind. The way the rule is written in the IAAF, it says that it always said that any technology that comes along has to be freely available. this was never freely available. This wasn't freely available to obviously Adidas, New Balance, ASICS athletes. They weren't able to use this technology. Now, a mass market version of the shoe did go on sale, so technically what you had was, say, Adidas athletes buying the shoe, the €300 one, painting it, and then putting an Adidas sticker on it.
Right.
So they wouldn't offend the sponsors, but there was people who have won marathon majors wearing the Nike shoe, pretending it was another shoe, another brand.
Yeah.
That's how effective it is. But the way the rule was written said it had to be freely available. This was not. And even now, the one Eliud Kipchoge is going to run in on Saturday it's not even available. It hasn't. I emailed Nike during the week. I was doing a story about it and just asked a few of their contacts, can you tell me anything about the shoe? Radio silence in return. Right. It's a prototype that's been in development. It's going to hit the mass market next year. And I've heard different things. The 4% shoe was the first one, and then it was 4.5% was the second innovation. That's a difference on running economy. It doesn't quite translate to actual speed, but it's probably 1 or 2% difference in speed. But this one I've heard between 6 and 8% touted. Oof. And I've seen things, some Nike have filed patents in America with shoes that have 3 carbon. The first one had 1 carbon fibre blade. One of the patents they've filed has 3 carbon fibre blades in amongst cushioning, and the shoe almost looks like the shoe that some girls wear to like appear taller. That's how thick the sole is. It's like that chunky. It's almost comical looking, but it is, in my mind, Eliud Kipchoge is going to break the 2-hour marathon tomorrow, and that will not count as an official world record, because not for the reasons of the shoe, even though the shoe is the biggest game changer here. It won't count because he's using teams of rotating pacemakers. So they have 41 world-class athletes who are going to sub in and out, 5 in front of them, 2 just behind him, to make sure he's going to be basically running in the middle of an X. And in my mind, he's going to run a 1:59, maybe even 1:58 marathon tomorrow. And the only other rule they're breaking is that you're meant to pick drinks up off the table. He's getting them handed to him on a bike.
Right.
And the level of detail they're going, obviously Ineos, the questionable petrochemical company owned by Britain's richest man, Jim Ratcliffe, is bankrolling this whole thing. I've heard 15 million touted for the amount of money they've put into this project. Wow. The level of detail, as soon as he takes a drink and throws the bottle away, there's going to be a nutritionist going to pick up that bottle, weigh it in the car, measure exactly how much of the energy drink he has drunk or water, and then feed back to Eliud, you need to drink this amount in this amount of time. That's the level of detail they're going to. But at the same time, while Eliud Kipchoge is a Kenyan athlete, the best marathoner of all time, he's won 10 straight major marathons, Olympic champion, and to be fair, much like the Barrowman Track Club, I've never once heard a story, and you do tend to hear the stories or the rumours about someone working with a dodgy doctor. I've never once heard a story about Eliud Kipchoge and a doping association. So you hope the best for that, and while he does appear to be the most talented athlete ever, you do wonder, are we crossing the line from sport into science fiction with all this technology? And like you said, the swimsuits, it may come time that they need to take action on this shoe and say no more.
Yeah, I think we've jumped, hop, skip and a jump right through that line. We've done no justice to the positive side of the sport at all, but I promise you we'll have you back in. I think it's the first time you've been in with us. We'll definitely have you back in, and we'll do that again.
I'm a very negative person, Aidan. What can I say?
You're in good company around here. Thanks a million for that, and enjoy the trip to Vienna as well for the weekend. You're watching OTB AM.
AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.